Chapter 2806, Distribution, Second Update. The second condition, Jian Wushuang continued. 70% of the territory and properties under the control of the Tower of Life and Death. The Tower Master trembled. Behind him, the great divine masters from the Tower of Life and Death looked furious. Even though they were prepared, they still found it hard to accept Jian Wushuang's second condition. Hand over 70% of their territories and industries? After all, the Tower of Life and Death had spent a long time to manage these territories and industries. This was their true foundation. Losing 50,000 sacred elixirs and resources was nothing. As long as they were given time, they could slowly accumulate the industries under the Tower of Life and Death. But now that they lost their industries, they lost the capital to accumulate resources. This condition was much harsher than the previous one. I, the Tower of Life and Death, accept this condition. As the Tower Master said this, his teeth were chattering. He had no other choice. Otherwise, he would never agree to such a condition. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang smiled and said again, "One last condition. Crimson Rock Castle has just been engaged in a war, and does not have enough experts. Therefore, the Tower of Life and Death needs to send a few experts to follow our orders. I see that the Tower of Life and Death still has more than 10 great divine masters. How about this? Sending 8 great divine masters is not a lot." Jian Wushuang said casually, but in the ears of the great divine masters of the Tower of Life and Death, their expressions changed drastically. Some of them were even more furious after their deaths. You want the sacred elixirs, you want the property, and now you want the experts of the Tower of Life and Death. The experts of the Tower of Life and Death were all extremely shocked and furious. If they did not know the terrifying strength of Jian Wushuang, they would have rushed forward and cut him into pieces. They had no choice. Jian Wushuang's 3 conditions were indeed a little too excessive. They were so excessive that they could not accept it. The Life and Death Tower Master's body was trembling at the moment, and his heart was burning with anger, but he could only endure it. After a long while, he finally raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang again. "Mr. Jian Yi, the Life and Death Tower has agreed to the third condition. But I wonder which 8 experts of the Life and Death Tower do you need to follow the orders of the Crimson Rock Castle?" "Tower Master." The great divine masters were all shocked. The Tower Master waved his hand, indicating that they should not say anything. "Let me look at the 8 experts." Jian Wushuang smiled and pointed with his finger. This, and that the great divine masters of the Tower of Life and Death were selected by Jian Wushuang one by one. The great divine masters he selected were all great divine masters with strong divine power and strength, leaving behind the weak. After selecting 8 great divine masters, there were 4 great divine masters left in the Tower of Life and Death. Apart from the Tower Master, there were only 3 junior great divine masters. One of them had just become a great divine master. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang wanted the Tower Master to become a commander without a leader. Even if he had the battle strength of a peak great divine master, he had no other great divine masters to command. He would not be able to do anything in the future, even if he wanted to. After these people go to Crimson Rock Castle, the upper echelons of the Tower of Life and Death will be a little empty. However, don't worry, Tower Master. If there are other forces in the Danyang continent who dare to harbor ill intentions toward the Tower of Life and Death, the Crimson Rock Tower will not pretend not to see it. Jian Wushuang smiled. "Now that the matter is settled, I can give you a month's time. I hope you can prepare everything in a month. I still have something to do, so we'll take my leave first." With that, Jian Wushuang turned around and left. After Jian Wushuang left, the experts of the Tower of Life and Death immediately burst into an uproar. "Tower Master, Jian Yi's conditions are so excessive. Why did you agree to them?" A great divine master roared. The Tower Master shook his head with a bitter smile. "So what if I don't agree? I'm not as strong as him. If I dared to say no just now, Jian Yi would immediately start a massacre. Who in the Tower of Life and Death can stop him? Now, although the Tower of Life and Death has paid a great price and lost 70% of its foundation, the Tower of Life and Death is still safe. It's enough that the Tower of Life and Death is safe." Hearing the words of the Tower Master, the surrounding great divine masters all fell silent. The Tower of Life and Death was carried out smoothly because of Jian Wushuang's intimidation. Although the other three forces were not as straightforward, they still submitted one by one and paid a huge price. The price was similar to that of the Life and Death Tower. Soon Jian Wushuang and Yin Suer met again. Things are going very smoothly. The four forces are all willing to submit, and they have offered huge resources and 70% of their assets. They have also agreed to send a group of experts to follow the orders of our Crimson Rock Castle, Yin Suer said. Then she looked at Jian Wushuang. Mr. Jian, the Sword Union is largely responsible for the victory of the war, including the results we have obtained. How do you want to distribute the things we have obtained from the four top forces? They had obtained great benefits, so they had to distribute them. After all, the Sword Union and the Crimson Rock Castle were just cooperating with each other, not a real family. I need sacred elixirs, Jian Wushuang said directly. I know. Yin Suer nodded slightly. How about this, Mr. Jian? I will give you all the sacred elixirs I have obtained from the four top forces, including the Nangong Palace, the Life and Death Tower, the Divine Devil Sect, and the Dongfang family. As for the territories and properties of the four top forces, how about they belong to the Crimson Rock Castle? Hearing this, Jian Wushuang looked indifferent. Behind him, Elder Tong, Great Divine Master Zhu Xian, and the others all frowned. Sure. Jian Wushuang nodded and agreed. Agreed. Yin Suer was shocked. Yin Shan, Palace Master Xizhen, and the others behind her were also surprised. The territories and properties controlled by the four top forces were obviously more valuable, and much more valuable. This distribution was obviously unfair. Yin Suer had only said it casually, and did not expect Jian Wushuang to agree. However, Jian Wushuang not only agreed, but also did not hesitate at all. Mr. Jian, it's a deal, Yin Suer said. Okay. Jian Wushuang nodded. Chapter 2807. One mountain cannot accommodate two tigers the third time. After both sides reached an agreement, they returned to their respective homes. In the Grand Hall of the Sword League, many high-level experts of the Sword League gathered together. They had learned that the four top forces had submitted and made great concessions. They also knew about the agreement between Jian Wushuang and Yin Suer. Young master, you shouldn't have promised Yin Suer so much. Xiao Tiexin stood beside Jian Wushuang. He frowned and said, This time, the four top forces have indeed forced them to hand over a lot of sacred elixirs. The four top forces together have about 200,000 sacred elixirs. It looks like a huge amount of money, but in fact 200,000 sacred elixirs are nothing compared to 70% of the territory property of the four top forces. Because of you, the Sword Union has grown at an amazing speed. Each day is stronger than the last. If the Sword Union can accept enough territories and industries from the four top forces, we can become a colossus on the Pill Sun continent. By then, we can compete with the Crimson Rock Castle, and even replace it as the new. Before Xiao Tiexin could finish her words, she suddenly stopped. This was because Xiao Tiexin had noticed Jian Wushuang's cold expression. She had been by Jian Wushuang's side for a long time, so she could also sense his emotions. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang was a little angry. Naturally, she did not dare to say anything more. Xiao, I can pretend that I didn't hear what you just said, but don't do it again, Jian Wushuang said coldly. Yes. Xiao Tiexin was shocked and immediately nodded obediently. Jian Wushuang glanced at Xiao Tiexin, and then looked at the experts of the Sword Union, frowning slightly. He could see that most of the higher-ups of the Sword Union had the same idea as Xiao Tiexin. They all thought that the Sword Union was very powerful now, and because of him, the most powerful expert of the realm, the Sword Union could take a step forward and replace Crimson Rock Castle as the new overlord. In fact, it was true that people went higher and water flowed lower. Any cultivator who reached a certain level would naturally want to go one step further. It was the same for a force. However, Jian Wushuang had a different idea from them. To be exact, Jian Wushuang's vision was much higher than theirs. He did not care about the Pill Sun sacred world at all. He did not even care about the Golden Crow 9 world. The reason why he established the Sword League in the sacred world of the Pil Sun was to help Yin Suer resolve the situation in the Pil Sun sacred world, and at the same time, make it easier for him to plunder cultivation resources. But now, he had basically achieved his goal, and the role of the Sword League had been fully played in his eyes. He did not want the Sword League to advance further, so when Yin Suer proposed the distribution, he agreed without even considering it. However, he had high standards and did not take the Pil Sun sacred world to heart. However, the experts under the Sword Union did not think so. After all, the experts under the Sword Union would at most become great divine venerables in the future. To them, the Pil Sun sacred world, or the Golden Crow Nine Worlds, was already an incomparably huge stage. They were limited to this. If there was a chance, they would naturally do their best to fight for it. Now that the four top forces in the Pil Sun sacred world have submitted and handed over many resources and industries, there is no longer any need to worry. Next, the Pil Sun sacred world will be ruled by the Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Union. Although the Sword Union and the Crimson Rock Castle have always been fighting together, it is only a cooperative relationship after all. There is no room for two tigers on the same mountain. Now that I'm here, neither the Sword Union nor the Crimson Rock Castle will dare to fall out with each other. However, if I leave the Pil Sun sacred world in the future, it's hard to say. It seems that I have to think of a better way to solve this problem. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. After a long while, he raised his head again and looked down at the experts of the Sword Union. Listen up. I have made an agreement with Yin Suer, the Lord of Crimson Rock Castle. The territories and industries vacated by the four top forces are all owned by Crimson Rock Castle. If anyone from the Sword Union dares to object or do anything, don't blame me for turning hostile. Jian Wushuang's cold voice echoed throughout the hall. Then Jian Wushuang turned around and left. After Jian Wushuang left, the high-level experts of the Sword Union looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Miss Xiao, what do you think? Dong Shui looked at Xiao Tiexin. Since you have an order, we just need to follow it. Don't ask about anything else, Xiao Tiexin said coldly. Yes, yes. The people of the Sword Union immediately nodded, not daring to have any objections. Jian Wushuang's position in the Sword Union was too high. Although he usually left many things to Xiao Tiexin and the others, he rarely paid attention to them. But in the Sword Union he still kept his word. No one dared to disobey his words. After all, Jian Wushuang was 99% the reason why the Sword Union had become what it was today. The reason why the Sword Union could compete with Crimson Rock Castle was purely because of Jian Wushuang's existence. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. The four top forces also obediently gave up the promised sacred elixirs and the territorial properties. At the same time, the great divine masters went to Crimson Rock Castle and listened to their orders. According to the agreement, the sacred elixirs were also sent to Jian Wushuang. In the secret chamber, Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged with a Qianquan loan in his hand. The Qianquan loan contained a large number of sacred elixirs. Some of the sacred elixirs were sent by the four top forces, and some were the spoils of war that Jian Wushuang had won in the previous battle. He had killed many experts in the previous battle. He had killed a total of 3 peak divine masters, including Palace Master Nanwu and the East God, who were in charge of the 2 major forces, especially Palace Master Nanwu. As the acknowledged #1 expert in the Pil Sun continent, Palace Master Nanwu was extremely wealthy. Jian Wushuang had obtained 30,000 sacred elixirs and all kinds of precious treasures from him alone. Jian Wushuang had not dealt with these treasures yet, but he had a lot of sacred elixirs. I consumed about 60,000 sacred elixirs when I broke through from an advanced divine master to a peak divine master. Now, I need more sacred elixirs to break through from a peak divine master to an elementary divine master. The sacred elixirs I have now are enough to improve my divine power, but I'm afraid I need more to break through, Jian Wushuang thought. Chapter 2808, The Cold Man 4th Update. As Jian Wushuang's realm increased, he needed more and more sacred elixirs. Even if he got more than 200,000 sacred pills, he would not be able to make another breakthrough. However, it was not a problem for him to increase his divine power. During my fight with Palace Master Nan Wu, I created the ultimate skill, the 8th move of the space-time sword skill. When I created the sword skill, my understanding of sword principle and space-time rules improved greatly. Now that I have calmed down, I can study it and digest all the progress. Jian Wushuang murmured. Soon, he closed his eyes and began to refine the sacred elixirs. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 12 years had passed. During these 12 years, Crimson Rock Castle had completely controlled the territories that the 4 top forces had given up. It had also arranged the experts from the 4 top forces and made good use of them. The power of Crimson Rock Castle suddenly soared. It began to regain its former dominance over the Danyang continent. Over the past 12 years, all the forces in the vast Danyang continent had submitted to the Crimson Rock Castle. Of course, these forces did not include the Sword Union. During the past 12 years, the Sword Union did not continue to expand because of Jian Wushuang's restriction. It also did not have any disputes with the Crimson Rock Castle. Naturally, the Crimson Rock Castle was not stupid enough to provoke the Sword Union. In other words, both sides were trying their best to restrain themselves and maintain their alliance. They were at the edge of the Danyang continent. In a hidden valley, several figures were standing there waiting respectfully. These people were the people of the Heaven Void Palace led by Chen Kong. In the battle 12 years ago, the Heaven Void Palace and the Blood Thunder King faction had joined hands, but they were defeated by Yin Suer and Jian Wushuang. Several senior great divine masters of the Heaven Void Palace had also died at the hands of Jian Wushuang. However, after the battle, the people of the Heaven Void Palace did not immediately leave the Pil Sun sacred world. Instead, they found a place to hide. Buzz! Buzz! A burst of dazzling light suddenly lit up somewhere in the valley. This light was produced by the activation of a wormhole hidden in the valley. The light gradually faded, and a figure slowly appeared in front of Chen Kong and the others. This person was wearing a stone-green brocade robe. He had dark red hair and a pair of deep and wise peach blossom eyes. His body was quite handsome, but his expression was incomparably cold. The moment he appeared in front of Chen Kong's group, Chen Kong and the experts from the Heavenly Void Palace immediately bowed in unison. Greetings, sir. This cold man did not glance at Chen Kong's group in front of him. Instead, he randomly looked around him. The Pil Sun Sacred Realm hasn't been here for quite some time. The last time I came to see that Crimson Rock Saint, but now that Crimson Rock Saint is long dead. Chen Kong and the others listened to the cold-looking man muttering to himself, but they did not dare to interrupt him. Instead, they all lowered their heads. They were very clear about the cold-looking man in front of them. He was the most trusted person of their Lord Palace Master, and he was also his right-hand man. There were many things in the Golden Crow Nine Realms that their Palace Lord could not handle personally. He had always sent this cold-looking man to handle them, and this time was no exception. After a long while, the cold-looking man finally turned his eyes to Chen Kong and the others. Tell me what exactly happened. Chen Kong immediately spoke, recounting the scene of the great battle and the events that had happened in the Pil Sun sacred world. My lord, I was indeed incompetent in this matter. I thought that after joining hands with the Blood Thunder King, we should be able to take control of the Crimson Rock Castle. I did not expect that the Crimson Rock Castle would actually invite the Sword Alliance as a helper. The current situation on the Pil Sun continent is completely different from before. The Crimson Rock Fort has already taken control of everything and respects Yin Suer completely. Under such circumstances, I really can't continue to complete the mission given by the Palace Master. So I can only ask for your help, my lord. Chen Kong was extremely respectful. Hearing Chen Kong's words, the cold man narrowed his eyes. Are you saying that you lost because of one person, and that person is now publicly acknowledged as the #1 expert in the Pil Sun sacred world? Yes, that Sword One's strength is extremely terrifying. He killed Palace Head Nan Wu in that battle, and he killed 3 peak stage Great Divine Masters in one go. Killing ordinary high-level Great Divine Masters was like slaughtering chickens and dogs. His strength is too strong. Chen Kong said hurriedly. Sword 1 and Yin Sewer have always been on the same side. With him around, even if I ask Palace Master to mobilize more people, I'm afraid I won't be able to do anything to Crimson Rock Castle. He killed Palace Master Nan Wu in a head-on battle? The cold man's expression changed. Although I've never fought Palace Master Nan Wu before, I've heard of him. His strength is indeed quite good, but Sword 1 was able to kill him in a head-on battle. Could it be that he's already become an invincible divine master? I don't know if he's an invincible divine master or not, but he did create an ultimate technique in that battle. His true realm is only that of a senior great divine master, Chen Kong said. Senior great divine master? The cold man was startled. Haha. A senior great divine master actually killed Palace Master Nan Wu directly, and could easily kill a peak great divine master. This is interesting. Even I'm interested in him. Tell me, where is Sword 1 now? He is in the Sword Union. If you want to go, I can lead the way, Chen Kong said. Lead the way. The cold man waved his hand. Chen Kong did not dare to be negligent and immediately led the way. Not long after, Chen Kong brought the cold man to the vicinity of the Sword Union's headquarters. Sir, that is where the Sword Union's headquarters is. Jianyi is inside right now, Chen Kong said. The cold man nodded slightly. His figure slowly moved forward and arrived in the void above the headquarters of the Sword Union. Sword 1. The cold voice came out of the cold man's mouth. It seemed to be a casual voice, but after being transmitted by divine power, the voice was like rolling thunder, echoing continuously in the world. Sword 1. Sword 1. Sword 1. The echoes reverberated throughout the world and did not disappear for a long time. Many experts of the Sword Union were instantly alarmed. Who dares to be presumptuous in front of the gate of our Sword Union? How dare he call the name of the Alliance Master directly? How dare he? Even if the Lord of Crimson Rock Castle, Yin Sewer, came here personally, he would still have to politely call our Alliance Master as Mr. Sword 1. Now, where did this fool who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth come from? A series of shocked and angry voices sounded one after another. From the Sword Alliance's nest, figures rushed out one after another. At the same time, those top experts of the Sword Alliance, such as Elder Tong, Great Divine Master Zhu Exan, and others had also appeared in the void. Chapter 2809. Marquis of 3 Many experts of the Sword Alliance glared at the cold man standing there. Only Elder Tong, Great Divine Master Zhu Exan, Elder Snake, and the others could sense that this person's strength seemed to be extraordinary, so their expressions were somewhat solemn. Who are you? Elder Tong stared at the cold man. Marquis of 3 The cold man spoke slowly. Marquis of 3 Upon hearing this name, many experts of the Sword Alliance felt that this name was extremely unfamiliar. Elder Tong had been in the Pil Sun continent for so many years. He should know which experts there were in the Pil Sun continent, but he had never heard of an expert called Marquis of 3 May I know why you have come to our Sword Alliance? Elder Tong asked. I'm here to see Sword 1. Are you Sword 1? The cold man Marquis of 3 looked at Elder Tong. No, I'm not. Elder Tong shook his head. Then I have nothing to say to you. Just hand over Sword 1 and tell me, said Marquis of 3 My League Master is in closed-door cultivation. Just no one can see him. So please leave, said Elder Snake. Oh, you are not willing to show yourself? Marquis of 3 smiled indifferently. Since I have come here personally to meet him, I will have to meet him even if he doesn't want to. Sir, you have a big mouth. Elder Tong's expression sank. The aura of a peak great deity erupted from his body in an instant, and directly pressed toward the Marquis of 3 Sir, it is best for you to leave quickly. Otherwise, this old man will not be courteous. Elder Tong said in a deep voice. You won't be polite? With just you? The Marquis of 3 glanced at Elder Tong, a hint of contempt flashing across his face. You're courting death. Elder Tong naturally saw the change in the Marquis of 3's expression, and immediately became furious. In an instant, Elder Tong directly turned into a bolt of lightning and charged toward the Marquis of 3 with endless power. But the moment he appeared in front of the Marquis of 3 buzz. The Marquis of Three Ean's body slightly swayed. Before Elder Tong and many experts of the Sword Alliance could react, they discovered a palm had already slapped onto Elder Tong's divine body. What? Elder Tong's face turned pale with fright. The terrifying power from that palm also caused his divine body to tremble crazily. Pooh! A large mouthful of blood directly spurted out of Elder Tong's mouth, and his body shot backward like a cannonball. When he regained his balance, Elder Tong's face had turned pale, and the aura on his body had been greatly weakened. He widened his eyes and stared at the Marquis of Three Ean in shock. The surrounding experts of the Sword Alliance also waited quietly. Elder Tong was a peak great divine master, but he was heavily injured by the Marquis of Three Ean in just the blink of an eye. What kind of strength was this? Sword 1. Marquis of Three Ean's voice rang out again. His voice reverberated in the world. Are you still not coming out? If you don't come out, your subordinates will die. The echoes continued to echo for a long time. Jian Wushuang had been cultivating in a secret chamber in the deepest part of the underground of the Sword Alliance's base. Finally, he had reached the pinnacle of his understanding of sword principle and spacetime rules. He had already reached this step when he created the ultimate skill. He was trying to master it. But at this moment, Marquis of Three Ean's voice was heard. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly and slowly opened his eyes. Then he moved and disappeared from the secret chamber. In the void above the Sword Alliance's lair, Jian Wushuang appeared out of thin air. As soon as he appeared, he saw the Marquis of Three Ean standing not far in front of him. Looking at the Marquis of Three Ean, Jian Wushuang could not help but narrow his eyes. Although the Marquis of Three Ean did not exude any aura and seemed ordinary, Jian Wushuang could feel tremendous pressure from him. The pressure was so great. It was even greater than when he faced Palace Master Nanwu. Since when did such a powerful expert appear in the Pil Sun sacred world? Jian Wushuang frowned. Then he noticed Elder Tong, whose aura was weak. What's going on? Jian Wushuang asked. Alliance Master, this expert called Marquis of Three Ean suddenly came here and called you by your name. He wanted to see you. We knew you were in seclusion, so we wanted him to leave. But he didn't want to, so Elder Tong attacked him. Of course, we didn't expect the Marquis of Three Ean to injure Elder Tong in one move seriously. Snake Elder said respectfully. You seriously injured Elder Tong in one move? Jian Wushuang's face darkened. He also knew Elder Tong's strength. If it were him, he would have to use all of his trump cards in order to seriously injure or kill Elder Tong. However, the Marquis of Three Ean did not use his full strength at all. It was just an understatement, but he still managed to do it. The strength of the Marquis of Three Ean. Who are you? Why are you here? Jian Wushuang looked at the Marquis of Three Ean with his hands behind his back. Although the Marquis of Three Ean was very powerful and gave him a lot of pressure, Jian Wushuang was not afraid. Are you Sword 1? The Marquis of Three Ean glanced at Jian Wushuang and said, Sure enough, you are just an advanced divine master. He praised the Marquis of Three Ean and said seriously, I came here today because I heard that a great genius expert appeared in the Pil Sun sacred world. He was just an advanced great divine master, but he killed Palace Master Nanwu. I was curious about you, so I came here to meet you. Just meet me? Jian Wushuang asked in a deep voice. Of course not. If possible, I would like to kill you, a genius. The Marquis of Three Ean grinned. Hearing this, the experts of the Sword Alliance narrowed their eyes and became extremely vigilant. They looked at Marquis of Three Ean with anger. Even Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes slightly. If you want to kill me, let's see if you have the ability to do so, Jian Wushuang said. Why don't you give it a try? The Marquis of Three Ean sneered, and his ordinary aura finally began to erupt. Rumble, this aura was earth-shaking. Although it was still at the Divine Master level, it was several times stronger than ordinary Divine Masters, or even peak Great Divine Masters. The aura stirred up the wind and clouds, and even Jian Wushuang's face became more serious. Without a doubt, this aura was the strongest Divine Master's aura that Jian Wushuang had ever seen. Jian Wushuang instantly recognized the identity of the person in front of him. Invincible Divine Master. Marquis of Three Ean is a real invincible Divine Master. Chapter 28:10. Invincible Divine Master. The Invincible Divine Master had not appeared in the Pil Sun sacred world for a long time. But now that the Marquis of 3 had appeared in front of him, Jian Wushuang immediately understood that the Marquis of 3 must have come from the outside world. After seeing the Marquis of 3's strength, Jian Wushuang naturally became more vigilant. Rumble. Majestic divine power swept out from his body. Jian Wushuang had already used all of his divine punishment, 9 luminary star armor, and 7-star secret skill. His aura suddenly soared. Oh, although he's only an advanced divine master, can his strength rise to the level of a peak divine master in a short time after using the secret skill? The Marquis of 3 looked at the change in Jian Wushuang's divine power aura and smiled indifferently. Then he directly attacked. He stretched out a hand, and his slender palm was suffused with a trace of green light. The green light surged out, and in an instant, a cyan cyclops giant that was 300 meters tall appeared in the void in front of him. This cyclops giant was covered in cyan armor and emitted a shocking murderous aura. Most importantly, when this cyan cyclops giant appeared, Jian Wushuang also felt an extremely strong rule power from the giant. A giant formed entirely from divine power and raw power. This power is amazing. Jian Wushuang's eyes focused. Go! The Marquis of 3 pointed with one hand. Roar! The cyan cyclops giant roared toward the sky, which formed a terrifying sound wave. The cyclops jumped up high, clenched his right hand into a fist, and fiercely rushed toward Jian Wushuang. Before the fist arrived, the sound of the air being compressed and exploded had already made Jian Wushuang extremely solemn. The Blood Mountain sword appeared in Jian Wushuang's hand. His body flashed in a strange manner, but the long sword slashed out directly from the top down. A beautiful sword light appeared out of thin air. The sword light had a trace of confusion and was intoxicating. It was the 7th move of the space-time swordsmanship, infatuation. Jian Wushuang did not use the ultimate skill, 1,000 squares residual light, which he had created. However, because he had created the ultimate skill, he had made a huge breakthrough in the space-time rule. Now his comprehension of the space-time rule had reached the limit of a divine master. With this comprehension, he once again used the intoxication move, which was much more powerful than before. The beautiful sword light collided with the cyan cyclops fist. Crash! The cyclops fist was immediately torn apart, and a large amount of cyan divine power spread wildly in all directions. The cyclops' entire arm was cut open by the sword light, but the power of the sword light had also dissipated. Space-time blades break! Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold. In an instant, a dense number of space-time blades burst out, nearly 100 of them. Nearly 100 space-time blades was the limit of a divine master's ability. Each of these space-time blades was extremely huge and carried an astonishing strangling power. In a short while they had directly crushed the Cyclops' huge body. The cyan Cyclops had completely collapsed. Not bad, you have some tricks. Marquis of 3 stood in the void and let Jian Wushuang crush the cyan Cyclops. But a faint smile appeared on his face. Jian Wushuang's face darkened slightly. Although he had neutralized the Marquis of 3's attack, he knew clearly that the cyan Cyclops was just a casual move of the Marquis of 3. He had not used his full strength, let alone his full strength. He was not really serious. But now, under Jian Wushuang's gaze, the Marquis of 3 flipped his palm, and a pair of scarlet claw gloves appeared in his hand. Marquis of 3 put on the claw gloves. There were 5 sharp claws on the scarlet claw gloves, which were as long as the claws of a fierce beast. They were extremely sharp and cold. Sword One, I heard that you are very good at speed. The Marquis of 3 stared at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's face was cold, and he did not answer. It just so happens that I am also good at speed. Since we have met today, let's compete and see who is faster. Marquis of 3 sneered, but his body suddenly moved. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Jian Wushuang only saw a series of afterimages flashing in the void in front of him. Each flash was extremely short. In just a few flashes, Marquis of 3 had already appeared in front of him, and his ice-cold sharp claws had already swung out. Hiss! The space seemed to be torn apart by this claw. So fast, Jian Wushuang was shocked. The speed that Marquis of 3 burst out in an instant, including the speed of his claws, was unbelievably fast. Even Jian Wushuang, who had an extremely high comprehension of the space-time rules, could not help being a little shocked. He immediately moved to block it. Clang! The Blood Mountain sword blocked the sharp claws, and Jian Wushuang immediately retreated. However, Marquis of 3 did not give up. In a flash, he could easily catch up with Jian Wushuang. Humph! Jian Wushuang's face darkened, and a vast golden divine power immediately burst out. Jian Wushuang directly used his realm skill. Golden Light Realm, Star Armor Realm, Punishment Prison, and Jian Wushuang's Sword World. The 4 suppression skills burst out at the same time and instantly pressed on Marquis of 3's body. This was the realm that Jian Wushuang had used all 4 realms to suppress only one person. Even Marquis of 3's body could not help but tremble when he used all his divine power. This domain suppression technique is indeed impressive. Marquis of 3 nodded secretly, but he continued to rush forward. Although his speed and strength were limited by the domain's suppression, it was still very small. His speed was still astonishingly fast. In a series of flashes, he appeared in front of Jian Wushuang again, and then his 2 sharp claws whoosh, 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 whoosh. Like 2 streams of light, they continued to attack Jian Wushuang from all directions. Jian Wushuang also exerted his comprehension of the space-time rules to the maximum. He completely unleashed his speed and brandished his Blood Mountain sword to block the attacks. Clang! 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 The sound of metal colliding rang out continuously. In just a short while, Jian Wushuang and the Marquis of 3 had exchanged over 100 head-on blows. He's too fast. He's even slightly faster than me under the suppression of my domain. Jian Wushuang was a little shocked. His comprehension of the space-time rules had reached the limit of a divine master. Logically speaking, unless his opponent's comprehension of the rules reached the level of an immortal saint, no one should be able to match his speed. But in fact, Marquis of 3 was indeed faster than him. It's a secret skill. The secret skill he used has greatly improved his speed, Jian Wushuang thought. Chapter 28:11, Blood Solidification, Second Update. There were countless secret techniques in the absolute beginning divine realm. There were those that could increase one's strength and power, and those that could increase one's protective ability. Naturally, there were also secret techniques that could increase one's speed. The Marquis of 3 in front of him should have cultivated a very powerful secret technique that could increase one's speed. With the help of the secret skill, his speed and his attack speed were greatly improved. Otherwise, his speed would not be so fast. Damn it, he is so fast that even I can't resist him. Jian Wushuang frowned. He had fought with Marquis of 3 hundreds of times, so Marquis of 3 was faster than him. Under such circumstances, he was under more and more pressure, and could not hold on any longer. Clang! There was another sound of metal colliding. Jian Wushuang's Blood Mountain sword was forced to move to the side. A flaw! Marquis of 3's eyes narrowed. He waved his right hand, and a sharp scarlet claw tore through the air and directly attacked Jian Wushuang's divine body. Jian Wushuang could not defend against this claw with his Blood Mountain sword. However, just as the scarlet claw was about to touch his divine body, a hazy purple light suddenly burst out from Jian Wushuang's body. The purple light continued to expand, forming a layer of purple barrier in an instant. At the same time, a faint ancient bell sound echoed. It was Jian Wushuang's protective treasure, the Purple Emperor Bell. The claw grabbed the purple bell, causing it to emit a clear bell sound. The color of the bell dimmed slightly, but the power of the claw was completely blocked by him. Marquis of 3's face darkened. He quickly retreated and pulled away from Jian Wushuang. Standing in the void far away, the Marquis of 3 looked at Jian Wushuang again. A protective treasure? And it seems to be quite powerful. The Marquis of 3 murmured. He did not know that the Purple Emperor Bell was obtained by Jian Wushuang after he killed Saber Master in the secret realm. It came from that secret realm. The secret realm was left behind by the rule master, so any treasure that appeared from there was nothing special. The Purple Emperor Bell's protective ability was, of course, very strong. With such a protective treasure in hand, I'm afraid such an attack can't do anything to you. In that case, I'll have to use my killing move. The Marquis of Three Ean's eyes were filled with a fierce light, and there was a layer of blood-red mist surrounding his body. Without any warning, the Marquis of Three Ean appeared directly in front of Jian Wushuang. He waved the sharp claw in his right hand again. It looked no different than before, and Jian Wushuang subconsciously waved his Blood Mountain sword to block it. However, just as the Blood Mountain sword was about to collide with the sharp claw disappeared in front of him. Is this a phantom? Jian Wushuang's face changed. Marquis of Three Ean sneered, and condensed the divine power in his hand. Divine Heart-Gouging Claw. Chi! The blood-red claw grabbed Jian Wushuang's heart with blood-red power. The barrier formed by the Purple Emperor Bell was still in front of the blood-red claw. However, as soon as the blood-red claw touched the Purple Emperor Bell, it opened its 5 fingers. The 5 streams of light were like 5 sharp sword rays, and a terrifying power burst out. Crack! Cracks appeared in the place where the blood-red claw touched the previously indestructible barrier of the Purple Emperor Bell. Then the entire barrier of the Purple Emperor Bell was completely broken. It broke my Purple Emperor Bell in one strike. Jian Wushuang was shocked. He immediately understood that this claw was the ultimate skill created by the Marquis of Three Ean. It was extremely powerful and extremely ghostly. Die! The blood-red claw broke the barrier of the Purple Emperor Bell and continued to attack Jian Wushuang's divine body. However, Jian Wushuang's body protection ability was not limited to the Purple Emperor Bell. His own body protection ability was extremely powerful. The claw had already used up about 80% of the Purple Emperor Bell's power, leaving only 20% of its power. It was only enough to break through the dark golden armor formed by the 9 luminaries' star armor. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang was still sent flying heavily, but he soon regained his footing. He stood in the void and stared at Marquis of Three Ean with a grave expression, as expected of the invincible divine master. He's really strong. Jian Wushuang sighed inwardly. Just this claw alone can't hurt him? The Marquis of Three Ean looked at Jian Wushuang and frowned slightly. That claw was indeed one of the ultimate skills he had created, but it obviously could not hurt Jian Wushuang. It had only broken the Purple Emperor Bell on his body. It seems that I have to use my last move, Marquis of Three Ean murmured, but his expression became extremely cold. Sword 1. You can only be proud of being able to force me to use my strongest move, even if you die on the spot. The Marquis of Three Ean's voice echoed throughout the world. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang's face could not help but darken. This guy actually has some tricks up his sleeve. I thought that claw just now was his strongest move, but he actually has an even stronger move. If I'm not mistaken, that claw just now should be the ultimate skill, and now he has an even stronger move. In other words, he created 2 ultimate skills at the same time? The experts of the Sword Alliance were also trembling in fear. From the beginning of this battle, they knew that this battle was not something they could interfere with. Even Elder Tong was not qualified to participate in such a big battle. They could only stand in the distance and watch quietly. The Marquis of Three Ean did not say any more nonsense. His expression was cold, and the vast blood-colored fog on his body swept out crazily. The blood-colored fog began to become extremely dense, like blood clouds that covered half of the world. In the blink of an eye, the blood-colored fog that filled the sky formed a huge creature in the void. It was a blood-colored giant wolf that was hundreds of meters tall and awe-inspiring. This blood-colored giant wolf had scarlet fur, scarlet eyes, and scarlet fangs. The most eye-catching part was its 4 sharp claws. Each of the 4 sharp claws was several meters long. Under the illumination of the light, they looked extremely cold and frightening. The giant blood-red wolf appeared in front of Jian Wushuang and stared at him with its scarlet eyes. Jian Wushuang stood there and could not help feeling a little frightened when being stared at by the giant blood-red wolf. At this moment, the Marquis of Three Ean, who was covered by the giant blood-red wolf, suddenly had a cold look in his eyes. Swish! The giant blood-red wolf rushed forward and raised one of its 4 sharp claws high up in the air. A scarlet claw shadow, which seemed to be condensed from blood, kept enlarging in the depths of Jian Wushuang's eyes. Blood-condensed claw. The Marquis of 3 also spoke coldly. Chapter 28:12. Nothing could be done. Third update. Whoosh. The giant blood-red wolf's sharp scarlet claws swept down. This claw seemed to tear heaven and earth in half, and the sound of air being torn apart was extremely loud. Seeing this claw coming, Jian Wushuang's face was also unusually solemn. Buzz buzz, a large amount of divine power swept up crazily. The blood mountain sword was also trembling crazily. The next moment, Jian Wushuang made his move. He just casually swung his sword. It looked like an ordinary person swinging a wooden sword. However, as soon as he swung his long sword, a sword light immediately lit up. This sword light was extremely weak, dim, and incomplete. It was a broken light, a remnant light. However, as soon as the remnant light appeared, there were at least hundreds and thousands of remnant lights everywhere. Under the gaze of many experts present, the original Jian Wushuang, who displayed the sword skills, suddenly turned into hundreds and thousands of people. It was the 8th move of the space-time sword skill, thousand-sided remnant light. It was also an ultimate skill. In the blink of an eye, the 2 ultimate skills collided head-on. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Endless divine power collided with each other crazily. It was obvious that Jian Wushuang's sword light was at an absolute disadvantage. This was very normal. The power of the ultimate skill also varied. Jian Wushuang had created the space-time swordsmanship by combining the power of the space-time rules. The most terrifying part of this sword was its unparalleled speed, but when it came to the collision of power and power, this sword was at most similar to the Marquis 3's heart-gouging divine claw. But compared to the blood-congealed divine claw, it was far inferior. Boom! The giant blood-red wolf's sharp claw only paused for a moment before it crushed down with a crushing force. The void where Jian Wushuang was completely covered by a large amount of blood-red divine power, which was crazily annihilating everything. Marquis of 3 had stopped what he was doing and stood in the void quietly watching. Blood-condensing claw was his most powerful move. It was much more powerful than the heart-gouging claw. He was very confident in this move. In his opinion, if Jian Wushuang still had the purple bell barrier, he might have been able to resist this move. But now, the purple emperor bell barrier had been defeated by him. With his own protective ability, he would at least be seriously injured by this claw. But at this moment, whoosh! A towering sword shadow appeared out of thin air. The sword shadow swept across everything with great power, completely dispersing the blood-red divine power in front of him. After the blood-red divine power faded, a figure slowly stepped out of the void. It was Jian Wushuang. At this moment, although he was in a sorry state, his face did not change at all, and his aura was still very strong. Marquis of 3 do you have any more powerful skills? Jian Wushuang stood there and sneered. He is not injured. The Marquis of 3 frowned and stared at Jian Wushuang. His perception was also very strong. Under his perception, Jian Wushuang was not injured at all. Moreover, Jian Wushuang's aura was still at the peak level, so it could not be faked. He was indeed not injured. I can't even hurt him with my strongest move. It would be wishful thinking to kill him. I'd better leave first and think about it later. The Marquis of 3 had made up his mind. Sword 1. Your protective ability is beyond my imagination. You're lucky today, but it won't end like this. Soon we'll fight again. The Marquis of 3 sneered. Then he turned around and left. He was very calm. He was not worried that Jian Wushuang, or the experts of the Sword Alliance, would keep him. Jian Wushuang had no intention of keeping him. After all, his strength was above everyone else's. After the Marquis of 3 had walked away, many high-level experts of the Sword Alliance immediately surrounded him. Alliance Master, are you okay? Snake Elder asked. I'm fine. Jian Wushuang shook his head, but his face was very serious. Marquis of 3 Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. Although the Marquis of 3 could not do anything to him in this battle, Jian Wushuang knew very well that the Marquis of 3 was stronger than him in terms of real strength. Although he did not use his full strength in this battle, he did not use the mountain and river map. However, Jian Wushuang knew that even if he used the mountain and river map and the 1,000 treasures great world with his full strength, he would still not be able to defeat the Marquis of 3 Yin. He could be considered the best and strongest among the peak divine masters, but there was still a gap between him and the real invincible divine master. He did not know this gap before, but today, when he fought with the Marquis of 3 Yin, he completely understood it. What is the background of the Marquis of 3 Yin? Why did he come to fight with me? Jian Wushuang frowned for a long time. You stay in the Sword Alliance. Oh, go to Crimson Rock Castle. Jian Wushuang instructed, and immediately headed to Crimson Rock Castle. In the void far away from the Sword Alliance's nest, the Marquis of 3 Yin, who had just left the Sword Alliance, stopped here. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Several figures appeared around the Marquis of 3 Yin. They were the people from the Heaven Void Palace led by Qin Kong. Sir, that sword won? Qin Kong asked carefully. He's still alive. I didn't manage to kill him, the Marquis of 3 Yin said. Didn't manage to kill him? Qin Kong and the others could not help but be startled. Although this sword one's strength is not bad, he is still a distance away from the invincible reverent god. I can easily suppress him in a head-on battle. However, his protective ability is extremely formidable. It can even be considered abnormal. I have already used many methods, including my strongest ultimate move, but in the end, I was unable to injure him. With such a terrifying protective ability, unless the palace master personally acts, no one in our Heavenly Void Temple, including the entire Heavenly Void realm, can kill him, the Marquis of 3 Yin said. Qin Kong's expression changed. He was very clear about the Marquis of 3 Yin's methods. Since the Marquis of 3 Yin had said so, then Sword One's protective ability was really strong. If the Sword One doesn't die, then it will be extremely difficult for us to conquer the Pil Sun sacred world, Qin Kong said. Yes, this Sword One is very difficult to deal with. Even if I use my full strength, I won't be able to do anything to him. On the other hand, he can rely on his domain methods and his protective ability to tangle with me. With his strength, if he is determined to tangle with me, I might not have the chance to free up my hands. Without me, it would be impossible for you people to conquer the Pil Sun sacred world, the Marquis of 3 Yin said. That how to do? Should we give up on this? Qin Kong could not help looking over. Chapter 28:13. Determined give up? The Marquis of 3 Yin shook his head. The palace master has been eyeing the Pil Sun sacred world for a long time. Previously, it was because the dragon god world was watching from the side that the palace master did not dare to do anything to the Pil Sun sacred world. He could only secretly send a part of his forces to infiltrate the world. But now, the dragon god world was fighting with the other world not long ago, and the two sides are now in a heated battle. They have no time to care about what is happening here. How can we miss such a rare opportunity? My lord, you mean? Qin Kong looked at the Marquis of 3 Yin. The sacred Pil Sun world must be conquered. But my lord, because of the agreement and comfort of the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, you can't come here personally. It's definitely not enough for you to conquer the sacred Pil Sun world. But if the Heavenly Void Army under my lord can be mobilized, it doesn't need to be all of them. Half of them should be enough to sweep the sacred Pil Sun world, the Marquis of 3 Yin said. Heavenly Void Army. Qin Kong could not help but be startled. The Heavenly Void Army was the strongest army under the control of that palace master of the Heavenly Void Palace. That Heavenly Void Palace master had once relied on the Heavenly Void Army to expand his territory. This was definitely one of the top armies of the Golden Crow 9 realms. If the Heavenly Void Army were to be mobilized, then with the current strength of the sacred Pil Sun world, they definitely would not be able to withstand it. I'll send a message to Palace Master now. Marquis of 3 Yin made up his mind, and immediately took out his token to send a message to the Palace Master. On the other side, after Jian Wushuang fought with the Marquis of 3 Yin, he immediately went to Crimson Rock Castle. Soon he met Yin Suer. In the towering palace, Besides Yin Suer, who sat on the highest throne, Yin Shan and Palace Master Xizhen stood on both sides. Sword 1, have a seat. Yin Suer was still very polite to Jian Wushuang, and did not put on any airs. She directly ordered someone to bring a throne to sit in the palace. I wonder why you are here today, Sword 1? Yin Suer asked. Doesn't Castle Master Suer know why I'm here? Haven't you received any news? Jian Wushuang asked in puzzlement. Many experts in the Sword Alliance, including those outside the Sword Alliance, knew about the battle between him and the Marquis of 3 Yin in the nest of the Sword Alliance. If Yin Suer had planted spies in the Sword Alliance, she should have received the news at once. But it seemed that Yin Suer did not. I really don't know why you're here, Sword 1, and I haven't received any news. Yin Suer was telling the truth. She did not place any spies in the Sword Alliance. In fact, Palace Master Xizhen and Yin Shan both minded her doing so, but she rejected them. She did not want Jian Wushuang to have any grudges against her. At present, Crimson Rock Castle still needed the Sword Alliance, and specifically Jian Wushuang's help. It's like this. Just now, an expert came to the Sword Alliance and fought with me. I lost this battle, Jian Wushuang said. What? Yin Suer, Yin Shan, and Palace Master Xizhen were all shocked. Jian Wushuang had killed Palace Master Nan Wu in a head-on fight, and he was widely recognized as the #1 expert in the Pil Sun continent. He was even very close to the legendary Invincible Divine Master. How could he lose in a one-on-one fight? Is it because of the Invincible Divine Master? Yin Suer immediately looked over. Yes, he is a real Invincible Divine Master, and he is very powerful. His name is the Marquis of 3 Yin. Do you know him, Castle Lord Suer? Jian Wushuang looked at Yin Suer. He had never left the Pil Sun sacred world, but he did not know about the background of the Marquis of 3 Yin. However, Yin Suer was different. She was the fort master of Crimson Rock Castle, and had been the ruler of the Pil Sun sacred world for many years. She often traveled in the outside world, so she must know more about the experts than Jian Wushuang. That was why Jian Wushuang came to ask. Marquis of 3 Yin? Upon hearing the name, Yin Suer's expression became extremely solemn. Yin Shan, who was beside her, immediately frowned. It was obvious that he had heard of the Marquis of 3 Yin. It seems that Castle Lord Suer knows of Marquis of 3 Yin? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Yes, I know of him. Yin Suer nodded slightly. Marquis of 3 Yin is a very famous expert in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. He is also a genuine Invincible Divine Master. Most of the ordinary Invincible Divine Masters have only created one ultimate skill, but he has created 2 at the same time. Moreover, the second skill is exceptionally powerful. It is much more powerful than the ordinary ultimate skill. Because of this, Marquis of 3 Yin can do whatever he wants in the Golden Crow 9 realms. As long as he is not stupid enough to provoke the Immortal Saint, no one can do anything to him. If an ordinary Divine Realm expert met him in the outside world, he would respectfully call him Sir. Why would such an expert come to our Pil Sun sacred world and take the initiative to look for me? Jian Wushuang asked. It's easy to understand. The Marquis of 3 Yin came from the Heaven Void world. He is a member of the Heaven Void Palace, and the most trusted person of the Master. He is the real arm of the Master. When the Master of the Heaven Void Palace is not convenient to handle many things in the Golden Crow 9 realms, he is usually the one to handle them, Yin Suer said. People from the Heaven Void Palace? Jian Wushuang immediately understood. The Heaven Void Palace had participated in the previous battle. It was obvious that the Heaven Void Palace was targeting the Pil Sun sacred world. The Master of the Heaven Void Palace wanted to attack the Pil Sun sacred world. Unfortunately, because of Jian Wushuang, the Heaven Void Palace was defeated and their people escaped. Now that the Marquis of 3 Yin had come in person, it was obvious that the Heaven Void Palace did not intend to stop there. Marquis of 3 Yin came to him because he wanted to kill him, the strongest expert in the Pil Sun continent, and then he could easily wipe out the Sword Alliance and Crimson Rock Castle. At that time, the Heavenly Void world did not need to send too many forces to easily occupy the Pil Sun sacred world. However, the Marquis of 3 Yin had not been able to kill him. If the Heavenly Void Palace wanted to occupy the Pil Sun sacred world, they would need to use even more methods. Previously, they sent Chen Kong and the others to infiltrate, and even colluded with the Blood Thunder King. Now that the Marquis of 3 has come in person, it seems that the Heavenly Void Palace Master is determined to annex the Pil Sun sacred world. Yin Shan said coldly, Swallow our sacred Pil Sun world? Doesn't he think that his appetite is too big? Palace Master Sijin said in a low voice, No, if the Heavenly Void Realm is really determined to take action against our sacred Pil Sun world, then with our current strength, I'm afraid we won't be able to resist. Yin Suer frowned. Chapter 28:14 Heavenly Void Army. The Heavenly Void Realm was originally larger and more powerful than our Pil Sun sacred world. Yin Suer's voice echoed throughout the entire hall. When Father was still alive, our Pil Sun sacred world was at its peak. Compared to the Heavenly Void Realm, our Pil Sun sacred world was slightly weaker. Moreover, the strength of the Heavenly Void Palace Master was also slightly stronger than Father. Since my father died, our Pil Sun sacred world's overall strength has plummeted. In recent years, we have been engaged in internal battles. During the internal strife, our Crimson Rock Castle has even lost control of the entire sacred world. It can be said that our sacred world has suffered a great loss. Although the internal strife has subsided and our sacred world has regained its absolute control, our sacred world's strength has not recovered. It is still at its lowest point. If the Heaven Void world takes the opportunity to attack us, our sacred world will have a hard time contending against it. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang, Yun Shan, and Palace Master Sijin's faces darkened. Don't the 9 realms of the Golden Crow have some potential agreements and agreements? Does the Heaven Void Palace really dare to invade our Saint Realm? Palace Master Sijin asked. It's true that there are agreements between the 9 realms of the Golden Crow, but most of them only restrict the immortal saints of each realm. As for the forces under their control, there are no restrictions. Therefore, as long as the Heaven Void Palace Master doesn't show himself, he will let his experts fight to expand the territory. This is not a violation of the agreement, Yin Suer said. At this moment, Yin Suer's expression suddenly changed. Oh no, what's wrong? Jian Wushuang, Yun Shan, and Palace Master Sijin immediately looked over. I just received a message from a good friend, Yin Suer said in a low voice. I met this good friend when I was adventuring in the outside world. He's from the Heavenly Void world, but he's not from the Heavenly Void Palace. He just learned that the Master of the Heavenly Void Palace has personally issued an order and has begun to gather the Heavenly Void Army. It seems that he's making a big move. The Heavenly Void Army? Jian Wushuang was puzzled. It is the strongest army under the control of the Heavenly Void Palace, just like the Crimson Rock Army in our Crimson Rock Castle. But the Heavenly Void Army is even stronger than the Crimson Rock Army, Yin Suer said solemnly. As far as I know, the Heavenly Void Army has always maintained the size of 2,000 people and has many experts. Even if it is just an ordinary soldier, he is usually an advanced Divine Master, or even a peak Divine Master. The captain of the 10-man team is usually a great Divine Master. What? Jian Wushuang was also shocked. In a 2,000-man army, the weakest ordinary soldier was an advanced Divine Master. The captain of the 10-man team was a great Divine Master? Did that mean that there were 200 great Divine Masters in the 2,000-man Heavenly Void Army? How is it possible that there are so many great Divine Masters and Divine Masters under the command of the Heavenly Void Palace? Jian Wushuang exclaimed. Of course it's possible, Yin Suer said directly. The Heavenly Void Palace has always been the leader of the Heavenly Void world. The Master of the Heavenly Void Palace controls everything, and the territory of the Heavenly Void world is much larger than that of our Pil Sun sacred world. Naturally, more than 80% of the experts are under the command of the Master of the Heavenly Void world. There are also various forces in the Heavenly Void world, but the experts of these forces follow the lead of the Heavenly Void Palace. Many experts in the Heavenly Void Army come from these forces. It can be said that the Heavenly Void Army is formed by gathering the power of the entire Heavenly Void realm. It's not difficult to find 200 great divine masters in such a huge Heavenly Void realm. Jian Wushuang nodded secretly. Indeed, take the current Pil Sun sacred world for example. Even though it had been in internal strife for many years, and its vitality had been greatly damaged, the great divine masters in the Pil Sun sacred world, Crimson Rock Castle, Sword Alliance, the four top forces, as well as many first-rate forces on the Pil Sun continent, and even a large number of solitary experts, adding them all up, there were still quite a number of them. It was just that these forces were currently unable to be completely controlled by the Crimson Rock Castle. However, in the Heavenly Void world, many great divine masters were mostly under the command of the Heavenly Void Temple Master. He had formed such a tyrannical Heavenly Void army, so it naturally became a reality. The Heavenly Void army's combat strength is extremely tyrannical, Suer continued. Even at its peak, there is still a huge gap between the Crimson Rock Army, formed by thousands of elite divine masters, and dozens of advanced divine masters, and the Heavenly Void Army. Now the combat strength of the Crimson Rock Army is not as good as before. Let's not talk about the advanced divine masters. Just the divine masters. There are still a few people in the Crimson Rock Army formed by peak divine masters. They can't compare to the Heavenly Void Army at all. The Heavenly Void Army rarely makes a move in the Heavenly Void realm, even on a small scale. However, according to the information I got this time, the Heavenly Void Army has made a huge ruckus. Half of the 2,000-man army seems to have gathered. A 1,000-man Heavenly Void Army can't be here to deal with the internal changes in the Heavenly Void realm. It must be for a war. Considering the arrival of Marquis of 3 the Heavenly Void Army is most likely coming for our Pil Sun sacred world. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang and Palace Master Si Zhen's expressions became unusually heavy. The Heavenly Void Army's combat strength was too terrifying. Even if half of the 2,000-man army had come, there would still be over 100 great divine masters. If such an army came to the Pil Sun sacred world, and was personally led by the Marquis of 3 it would be impossible to wipe out the current Pil Sun sacred world. It was not impossible. What should we do? Palace Master Si Zhen was extremely anxious, and immediately thought of a countermeasure. What should come will come, and there's nothing we can do to change it. Now we can only think of a way to deal with the Heavenly Void Army. Yun Shan narrowed his eyes. Right. Suer nodded. Actually, we are already considered lucky. Fortunately, Mr. Sword One was strong enough to get rid of the Marquis of 3 The Marquis of 3 probably knows that he can't do anything to Sword One. Once he attacks, Sword One can completely stop him, which is why he asked the Heavenly Void Palace Master to gather the Heavenly Void Army. If Sword One did not stop the Marquis of 3 the Marquis of 3 would have killed all the higher-ups of our Crimson Rock Castle with his own strength. However, he only needed to bring people to take over the territory of our Pil Sun sacred world. And now, even though the Heavenly Void Army is extremely powerful, it will still take some time to gather them. Our Pil Sun sacred world still has some time to prepare. As long as we think of a way to unite all the factions and experts of the Pil Sun sacred world, we might have a chance of winning even if we fight the Heavenly Void Army head-on. Chapter 28:15. Sending the Buddha to the West. That's true. But after so many years of internal strife in the sacred Pil Sun world, Crimson Rock Castle's prestige toward the experts of various factions has long since fallen. Although Crimson Rock Castle has regained control of everything, it's easier said than done to unite all the experts of those factions within a short period of time. Yin Shan frowned. It's not easy, but it's the only way. No matter what, we have to do our best to fight for it. Even if we have to pay a big price for it, we won't hesitate, Suer said in a low voice. Then she looked at Jian Wushuang and said, Sword One, I'm afraid we'll have to rely on you and the Sword Alliance in this crisis. I hope you can help us. Suer was very sincere. She really needed Jian Wushuang and the Sword Alliance. Especially Jian Wushuang. Without him, No one in the Pil-Sun sacred world could compete with the Marquis of 3 Sure. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly, and did not refuse. Soon, Jian Wushuang left the Crimson Rock Castle. But after leaving Crimson Rock Castle, his heart was heavy. Heavenly Void Palace, Heavenly Void Army. Even Jian Wushuang felt a great pressure when he learned of the strength of the Heavenly Void Army, and knew that they were gathering to attack the Pil-Sun sacred world. Yin Shan is right. Although Crimson Rock Castle has regained control of everything in the Pil-Sun sacred world, its prestige has long been lost. It will not be easy to regain it in a short time. Even if the entire Pil-Sun sacred world is in danger, Crimson Rock Castle will not be able to gather many experts to participate in the battle. Jian Wushuang thought to himself. To the many factions of the Pil-Sun sacred world, including many solitary experts, it did not matter much whether the Pil-Sun sacred world was annexed or not. Even if the Pil-Sun sacred world was annexed by the Heavenly Void world, it would only change its name. It would not affect the interests of the experts of these factions, especially the four top factions. They were currently being forced by the Crimson Rock Castle to a miserable state. Many experts of their own were working under the Crimson Rock Castle, suffering unspeakably. At this moment, they hoped that the Heavenly Void Palace would attack them, so that they could regroup. It seems that Crimson Rock Castle has encountered a real crisis. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes, but he began to hesitate. He was hesitating whether he should help Crimson Rock Castle to solve this crisis. To be honest, he did not have any feelings for the Crimson Rock Castle, nor did he have much sense of belonging to the Pil-Sun sacred world. The reason why he had helped Crimson Rock Castle and Yin Sewer was pure because of the agreement he had made with Crimson Rock Saint. However, he had already done a lot to help Yin Sewer obtain victory in the battle, and allow her to perfectly control the Pil-Sun sacred world. Its value had already surpassed that of a heaven-sealing scroll. Therefore, even if he did not care about Crimson Rock Castle now, he could just leave. He could feel at ease. However, Jian Wushuang was not the kind of person who would give up a burden so easily. A good man does what he has to do. Back then, Saint Crimson Rock gave me a scroll of the heaven-sealing map to help Yin Sewer solve the crisis and stabilize Crimson Rock Castle and the Pil-Sun sacred world. Now I have only done half of it. Although what I have done far exceeds the value of a scroll of the heaven-sealing map, since I have agreed to it, I have to complete it even if I have to suffer a little loss. What's more, the Crimson Rock Saint gave me a heaven-cleaving token, asking me to help Yin Sewer break through to the Immortal Saint realm. If I don't care about this and let her die, then I'll get the heaven-cleaving token for nothing. It doesn't conform to my principles. Jian Wushuang pondered, but he had already made a decision in his heart. The Heavenly Void Army was coming. He would try his best to help Yin Sewer in this crisis. The Heavenly Void Army is too powerful, and Marquis of 3 is in charge. With the help of Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Alliance, even if we gather a group of experts in the Pil-Sun sacred world, we won't be able to fight the Heavenly Void Army head-on. If I want to help Yin Sewer solve this crisis, there's only one way. Phew! I have to go there again. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and immediately set off. A dense ancient forest filled with a large amount of gray fog and a gloomy and mysterious aura. This was the infamous boneyard on the Pil-Sun continent. There were countless dangers here, and very few people dared to venture here. However, Jian Wushuang knew that there was a big secret hidden in the bone burial ground. The secret realm of heaven and earth created by a rule master was hidden in the bone burial ground. The bone burial ground was extremely dangerous, but with Jian Wushuang's current strength, as long as he did not enter the deepest and most dangerous place, it was not too risky. Jian Wushuang continued his journey. Before long, he arrived at an inconspicuous small valley. Here I am again. Jian Wushuang looked at the valley in front of him, but a faint smile appeared on his face. He knew that this valley was the entrance to the secret realm. Jian Wushuang flipped his palm, and a black sword appeared in his hand. The black sword was originally divided into 6 parts. Previously, Jian Wushuang and his group of 6 went to the secret realm together, and each of them had a broken sword. The 6 broken swords were the complete keepsake to open the secret realm. However, Jian Wushuang was the only one who survived the adventure in the secret realm. Other than the winged god who died in the cemetery, all the treasures of the remaining 5 people fell into Jian Wushuang's hands. Naturally, the broken sword in their hands was also included. The broken sword in the winged god's hand was also given to him by Spirit Valley Elder when Jian Wushuang left the secret realm. Therefore, Jian Wushuang now had a complete keepsake, so he could easily open the secret realm. At this moment, as Jian Wushuang took out the complete keepsake, a unique aura spread from the black sword's body. Buzz buzz. The valley in front of him trembled slightly under this unique aura. Then, a space passage slowly appeared in the void in the center. This space passage was extremely dark and mysterious. It was impossible to know what was at the other end of the passage with the naked eye. However, Jian Wushuang had been here once before, so he was very familiar with it. Without any hesitation, Jian Wushuang leaped and directly entered the space passage. Light flashed, and when he appeared again, Jian Wushuang had already arrived in a huge dark void. This dark void was boundless, and there was not a trace of light. Jian Wushuang sped up and directly rushed toward the end of the dark void in front of him, which was the depths of the secret realm. Chapter 28:16. The test. There were many dangerous places in the secret realm, but these places were determined by the strength of the cultivator. Jian Wushuang was only a divine master, so the danger he encountered was naturally only for divine masters. He kept moving forward. With his current strength, he easily passed through the first and second dangerous places. Even in the third danger zone, which was in the cemetery, Jian Wushuang encountered many corpse puppets along the way. Some golden-armored corpse puppets even appeared, but they were all easily taken care of by Jian Wushuang. Soon, Jian Wushuang arrived at the core of the secret realm, where the invincible immortal saints and the bodies of the 2 rule masters were located. When he arrived, a strange light suddenly condensed in front of Jian Wushuang. The light was gray and gradually condensed into a human figure. It was a simple-looking gray-robed elder. He was Elder Gu, the spirit of the secret realm. Greetings, Elder Gu. Jian Wushuang immediately bowed humbly when he saw him. Little guy, you're here again. With his hands behind his back, Elder Gu fixed his indifferent eyes on Jian Wushuang. Before you left, I told you to come back after you broke through to become an immortal saint. But now, you're obviously far from becoming an immortal saint. I did, but this time, my world has encountered a great crisis. I have no choice but to come here again. I want to ask for your help, Elder Gu, Jian Wushuang said. You want me to help you? Elder Gu could not help but smile. Little guy, are you mistaken? I'm just a spirit of the secret realm. I can't leave the secret realm, so how can I help you? Yes, Jian Wushuang said. I know you control everything in this secret realm. Like the cemetery I walked through before, those corpse puppets are also under your control. I came here this time to ask for some corpse puppets from you, so that I can fight for my world. Is that so? Elder Gu asked. I do have corpse puppets, but they were refined by my master when he was alive. They are all my master's things. I have been guarding this secret realm according to my master's instructions. Everything has to be done according to the rules. If you want to get the treasures in this secret realm, you have to pass the corresponding tests, even for these insignificant corpse puppets. I know, but what kind of test do I need to pass to get these corpse puppets? Jian Wushuang asked directly. If it's a test, Elder Gu began to ponder. After a moment he spoke again. Master has left many tests in this secret realm, but most of them are aimed at the immortal saint and above. You are only a divine master after all. The chances of you passing even the simplest test left by master are very slim. Moreover, these tests are life and death tests. If you are careless, you will be doomed. Therefore, I advise you not to try. Is the probability of passing very low? Jian Wushuang frowned, but then he said seriously, time is tight, and I can't think of any other way to resolve this crisis. I have no choice but to try. Are you really going to try? Elder Gu narrowed his eyes. Su Han, it's not that I look down on you, but master's methods are far beyond your imagination. The simplest test he left is aimed at the soul. If you are not careful, your soul will be completely destroyed. If you don't listen to my advice and try, the probability of you getting out of the test is much lower than 10%. Elder Gu obviously had some expectations for Jian Wushuang, so he did not want Jian Wushuang to choose this road that was close to death. His words were also obviously with an air of persuasion. However, he did not know that his persuasion made Jian Wushuang even more determined. A test on the soul? Jian Wushuang smiled in his heart. Elder Gu, I have decided to accept this test. Since you're so determined, I won't force you. Elder Gu waved his hand, and a space passage appeared in the void. This space passage leads to the place where you'll be tested. You can accept the test as long as you can endure the test for 6 hours. If you don't die after 6 hours, you'll pass. Take care of yourself. Elder Gu sighed. Jian Wushuang bowed slightly to Elder Gu, and then stepped into the space passage without any hesitation. Seeing Jian Wushuang enter the space passage, Elder Gu shook his head secretly. In his opinion, Jian Wushuang should not be able to pass this test. However, since Jian Wushuang wanted to hold on, he could not stop him. I hope this little guy is lucky. Elder Gu could only think so. After entering the space passage, Jian Wushuang directly appeared in a dark void. The dark void was boundless, just like the dark void where Elder Gu had asked him to compete with the Saber Master and the others for the universe. As soon as Jian Wushuang entered the dark void, he did not have time to check his surroundings. Boom! A strong soul power surged up crazily. The soul power was extremely powerful. It suddenly appeared in the dark void, and was almost solid. In an instant, a huge soul storm took shape in the dark void. The soul storm was still expanding at an alarming speed. What's this? Looking at the soul storm in front of him, Jian Wushuang's pupils constricted. He was about to dodge, but he found that the same soul power had burst out in several places nearby, forming the same soul storm. The soul storm appeared in every corner around him, completely blocking his escape route, leaving him no room to escape. As the soul storm continued to expand, Jian Wushuang was instantly sucked into the soul storm. Rumble! As soon as he fell into the storm, a large amount of soul power immediately rushed toward him crazily. The soul power from all directions poured into his mind, and crazily rushed toward the material soul in his sea of consciousness. It's a soul attack, and it's a continuous soul attack. Jian Wushuang's face was solemn. When he sensed the soul power rushing toward him, a purple bell immediately rose from the surface of his body. The purple emperor bell was not only a protective treasure, but it also had a certain defensive effect against soul attacks. Now the power of the surrounding soul power was greatly weakened after passing through the purple emperor bell. Chapter 28:17 Death? After being weakened by the purple emperor bell, the remaining power entered Jian Wushuang's sea of consciousness and was blocked by the exquisite pagoda. The defense ability of the exquisite pagoda against Jian Wushuang's soul was more than 10 times stronger than the purple emperor bell. The impact of the soul power on the exquisite pagoda was like a drop of water dropping into the sea, without causing too much of a ripple. Even if the soul power continued to attack, the exquisite pagoda could easily withstand it. Is this the extent of the soul test? Jian Wushuang muttered, but his expression suddenly changed. No, it's not that simple. The soul power is getting stronger. Yes, the crazy soul power is getting stronger. Jian Wushuang had already sensed it. As time passed, the spiritual power was getting stronger and stronger. Previously, the spiritual power was weakened by the purple emperor bell, and then rushed to the exquisite pagoda, so it could not cause too much of a stir. However, in just 15 minutes, the spiritual power was also coming through the purple emperor bell. It was enough to cause the exquisite pagoda to tremble slightly. An hour later, the exquisite pagoda was trembling crazily, and it was even on the verge of collapsing. Oh no! Jian Wushuang's face turned ugly. The exquisite pagoda was his strongest soul defense method. Once the exquisite pagoda collapsed, the soul power could recklessly attack his physical soul, which was only at the level of an ordinary first-grade great divine master. Although his soul was much stronger than his peers, because he had lived 2 lives, and was a perfect chaotic creature, He could not withstand the continuous soul attack. Bang! Finally, under the continuous soul attack, the exquisite pagoda in Jian Wushuang's spiritual sea completely collapsed. Once the exquisite pagoda collapsed, the continuous soul power directly attacked Jian Wushuang's physical soul. Humph! Jian Wushuang let out a muffled groan, but he began to rely on his physical soul to resist the soul power. However, it was obviously very difficult to resist. Outside the dark void, Elder Gu stood quietly with his hands behind his back, his eyes extremely turbid. Although he was not in the dark void, he clearly saw what happened in the dark void. Elder Gu shook his head when he saw that Jian Wushuang's soul defense had collapsed, and he could only rely on his own soul to resist the soul attack. After all, this is a test left by my master. Although it's the simplest and easiest, to pass it, one must have a soul that is infinitely close to that of the immortal saint, and has a powerful soul defense technique. His soul must be extremely tough, and can withstand the wear and tear. As for him, his soul defense ability is not weak, but his own soul level is too low. He is only a junior Great Divine Master, but he is still far from being a senior Great Divine Master. Even though his soul is extremely tough, it will be completely crushed under the continuous impact of the soul power. What a pity for such a genius! Elder Gu sighed secretly. He felt that it was not worth it for Jian Wushuang, and felt that it was a pity. The last time Jian Wushuang came to this secret realm with the Saber Master and the others, he saw that Jian Wushuang was extremely talented and had big secrets. He was also very curious about Jian Wushuang and looked forward to his growth. Therefore, before Jian Wushuang left, he specifically told Jian Wushuang to come to this secret realm again when he broke through to become an immortal saint. But now, with great talent and promise, he is determined to try the test his master left behind. As a result, he is dead for sure. It's only a matter of time, the old man said to himself. In the dark void, as time went by, Jian Wushuang, who was in the middle of the soul storm, found it harder and harder to resist the soul attack. His real soul, under the impact of the soul power, became weaker and weaker. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours had passed. However, Elder Gu had said that Jian Wushuang would last 6 hours in the test space. Now only 1/3 of the time had passed, but Jian Wushuang was obviously unable to hold on any longer. Buzz! The physical soul in Jian Wushuang's sea of consciousness became weaker and weaker. Finally, there was no room for struggle. In just a moment, Jian Wushuang's physical soul completely collapsed. Is he dead? 2 hours. Elder Gu shook his head secretly. He had already seen Jian Wushuang's soul completely destroyed. Under such circumstances, even those immortal saints with immortal bodies were doomed to die. Elder Gu naturally thought that Jian Wushuang was already dead. He was ready to withdraw from this test. But suddenly, in the boundless dark space, Jian Wushuang opened his eyes with a solemn expression. In his sea of consciousness, the substantial soul, which had been completely destroyed, condensed again at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, it was condensed again. An intact substantial soul appeared there again. At the same time, it started to resist the soul attack again. What? Even Elder Gu was shocked when he saw this scene. His eyes were wide open. He didn't die? His soul was clearly completely annihilated. How could he not die? Not only did he not die, but his soul was also completely restored. How is this possible? Elder Gu could not believe what he was seeing. He was the spirit of the secret realm, and his master was a high and mighty master of laws. His knowledge was also vast. He knew many strange things in the absolute beginning divine realm. Logically, nothing could make him lose his composure like this. However, this scene really shocked him. A cultivator's soul was completely annihilated. How could he not die? He even recovered in the blink of an eye. How is this possible? Impossible. Impossible. Although the absolute beginning divine realm is vast, and has countless experts, when I followed my master to battle, I saw many world-shaking super experts. However, those experts used their souls as the core. If their souls weren't destroyed, they wouldn't die. If their souls were completely annihilated, unless someone used a heaven-defying method to reverse time and space, they would be resurrected. But this man, He didn't need any means, let alone the so-called reversal of time and space. He just casually recovered the soul that had been annihilated. Chapter 28:18. The Anomaly. Elder Gu was completely stunned. This was normal because he had indeed seen something impossible. This was completely against the common sense of the heavenly axiom, and was unreasonable. But it had indeed happened. After Jian Wushuang's real soul recovered in the boundless dark void, he continued to resist the soul attack. At this moment, a faint smile appeared on Jian Wushuang's face. I heard from Elder Gu that this test is aimed at the soul, so I knew that I could pass this test. Now it seems that it's not very likely, but I can definitely pass it, Jian Wushuang muttered. The test aimed at the soul. To put it bluntly, he had to find a way to resist the soul attack that had always existed. The soul attack was indeed potent, and was getting stronger. It was almost impossible for a divine master, even an invincible divine master, to pass the test. However, it was not difficult for Jian Wushuang. Yes, he could not resist the soul attack forever. But he did not need to resist it. Even if the soul attack destroyed his physical soul, he could rely on his divine power to recover it completely in the next moment. Then he could continue to rely on his physical soul to block it. After repeating this process, to him, it was nothing more than the consumption of divine power. However, his divine power was vast and boundless. The divine power used to recover his physical soul was nothing compared to his vast divine power. Let alone recovering once or twice. Even if he recovered dozens of times, it was nothing to him. He only needed to stay in this space for 6 hours, and he could easily survive it. Although the soul impact can't do anything to me, it does suppress my soul. So it's just right to temper my soul strength. Jian Wushuang smiled and began to use the soul impact. He continued to temper his soul strength. Time continued to pass. Jian Wushuang's real soul was destroyed for the second time, but he immediately recovered and resisted the soul impact. Recovered again? Elder Gu, outside the void, saw this scene, and his expression was exciting. Monster, this kid is definitely a monster. No, he can't be called a monster. No matter how powerful a monster is, it is still within the common sense of the heavenly axiom. However, this kid has completely defied the common sense of the heavenly axiom. Therefore, he can't be described as a monster. He should be called an outlier. Yes, it's an outlier of the heavenly axiom. It's filled with the heavenly axiom. Therefore, it shouldn't exist. Elder Gu roared, his voice hoarse. In the dark void, Jian Wushuang's real soul was destroyed twice, thrice, and then restored. After 6 hours, Jian Wushuang's soul had been destroyed 7 times. He also recovered 7 times. Finally, after 6 hours, the continuous soul impact in the surroundings completely dissipated. Is it over? Jian Wushuang stood in the dark void and felt the retreat of the surrounding space-time impact. But he felt a little regretful. He actually wanted to stay under the soul impact for a while longer. Anyway, the soul impact could not do anything to him. Instead, it gave him soul power, which had a great tempering effect. In these 6 hours, he clearly felt that his soul strength had increased a lot. Unfortunately, now that the test was over, the soul impact was gone. Buzz! The void slightly twisted, and a space passage appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Along the space passage, Jian Wushuang appeared in the cemetery again, in front of Elder Gu. Seeing Elder Gu again, Jian Wushuang found that Elder Gu's expression was quite interesting. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang was not surprised. He knew that Elder Gu should have seen his performance in the dark void just now. Although naturally, he also saw his physical soul being destroyed again and again, which was against the common sense of heaven. It would be strange if Elder Gu were not surprised. Su Han, I'm more and more curious about what kind of big secret you have. Elder Gu stared at Jian Wushuang with a bright light in his eyes. I do have a secret, but even if you know it, it won't be of any use to you or even your master. On the contrary, it might even bring disaster. Believe me, I'm not lying, Jian Wushuang said in a deep voice. Elder Gu looked at Jian Wushuang deeply, but he did not deny it. He knew that if Jian Wushuang could do such a thing that went against the laws of nature, He must have a world-shaking secret. Even if his master were still alive, let alone the spirit of the secret realm, even a rule master would not be able to come into contact with such a secret. Such a big secret must have involved the highest level of the divine beginning world. Those who were qualified to participate must be super experts at the level of Saint Realm Masters. No wonder you dared to take this test before. It turns out that you have a lot of confidence in yourself, Elder Gu said. Jian Wushuang smiled and did not comment. If it were anyone else, they would have given up when they heard Elder Gu's kind advice, and knew that the test was so difficult, and that there was a high chance of them dying. However, Jian Wushuang was different. He was too confident in his ability. As a perfect chaotic creature with a perfect immortal body, it was not easy to kill him, not to mention that it was only a test left by a rule master. Even if the rule master, who created this secret realm, were still alive, and standing in front of Jian Wushuang, he would not be able to kill Jian Wushuang. At most, he could suppress him while he was still alive. Because of this, Jian Wushuang was not afraid at all, because he knew that he would not die in this test. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. Elder Gu waved his hand. You survived for 6 hours in that space. Although you used an unusual method, you did pass the test. Therefore, according to the agreement, I can give you some of the corpse puppets in this secret realm. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up immediately. Thank you, Elder Gu. Wait here for a while. Then, I'll go and prepare them for you, Elder Gu said. But his figure disappeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was not in a hurry. He just waited here quietly. Chapter 28:19. Corpse Puppet Army. Not long after, Elder Gu appeared in front of Jian Wushuang again. I've checked carefully. There are only a few corpse puppets left in the secret realm, except for those who must stay in the secret realm to stop the cultivators, Elder Gu said. Not many. How many? Jian Wushuang asked. I tried my best to select 100 corpse puppets for you. I don't know if I can help you, Elder Gu said. 100. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up. Look. Elder Gu waved his hand, and streams of flowing light shot out. They appeared in the surrounding void, and condensed into ice-cold figures. These figures were all dead. There were a total of 100 corpse puppets standing in the surrounding void. Jian Wushuang immediately looked around. These corpse puppets were no different from the ones Jian Wushuang had seen before. They were all copper-armored, silver-armored, and gold-armored corpse puppets. More than half of the copper-armored corpse puppets had the battle strength of an ordinary advanced divine master. There were more than 60 copper-armored corpse puppets in the surrounding 100 corpse puppets. There were 30 silver-armored corpse puppets with the battle strength of an advanced divine master. The remaining 10 were gold-armored corpse puppets. 10 gold-armored corpse puppets, 30 silver-armored corpse puppets, and 60 bronze-armored corpse puppets. Jian Wushuang was extremely excited. 100 corpse puppets meant 100 great divine masters' battle strength. The weakest among them was an advanced great divine master. And there were 10 gold-armored corpse puppets, which was the battle strength of a peak great divine master. All of them added together. This was a powerful corpse puppet army. Yes, it was a corpse puppet army. There are 200 great divine masters in the Heaven Void Temple's army of 2,000 people. However, their strength is uneven. I'm afraid that many of them are elementary great divine masters. And there are definitely a few advanced great divine masters. As for peak great divine masters, there must be even fewer. This time, only half of the Heavenly Void Palace army, or 100 great divine masters, gathered under the orders of the master of the Heavenly Void Palace. The corpse puppet army standing in front of me now also has 100 great divine masters. Their numbers are equal, but in terms of quality, the corpse puppet army clearly has the absolute advantage. With the corpse puppet army in hand, and the strength of Crimson Rock Castle, and our Sword Alliance, our camp will definitely have the absolute advantage if we fight against the Heavenly Void army now. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands, but he was pleasantly surprised. At this time, Elder Gu looked at him again and asked, Su Han, are you satisfied with the 100 corpse puppets? Yes, very satisfied. Jian Wushuang nodded and said, In fact, these corpse puppets are nothing. They are just small things that Master refined when he was alive. Master could refine saint-level corpse puppets when he was alive, but unfortunately, there are not many of them left in this secret realm. I can't give you saint-level corpse puppets, but I have one corpse puppet with me, so I can give it to you, Elder Gu said. There's another one? Jian Wushuang looked at Elder Gu in surprise. Elder Gu smiled mysteriously and waved his hand again. In an instant, a streak of blood-red light shot out. In front of Jian Wushuang, a corpse puppet in blood-red armor with skin that looked like it was made of blood appeared. This corpse puppet was also lifeless. Since it had not attacked, Jian Wushuang could not immediately determine its strength. Elder Gu, what is this? Jian Wushuang could only ask. It's above the golden armored corpse puppet. The blood armored corpse puppet is also a corpse puppet at the Divine Master level. However, among Divine Masters, the blood armored corpse puppet is invincible. Elder Gu said. Invincible among Divine Masters? Invincible Divine Master? Jian Wushuang was shocked. Yes, according to the realm of the primordial divine world, his battle strength is comparable to that of the extremely rare invincible Divine Master, Elder Gu said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Jian Wushuang was overjoyed. With the army of corpse puppets formed by 100 corpse puppets, he was confident that he could fight against the Heaven Void army. The only problem was the invincible Divine Master of the Marquis of 3-een. He had been unable to find a way to fight against Marquis 3-een. But now Elder Gu had given him a higher-level blood-armored corpse puppet that was comparable to the invincible Divine Master. How could he not be surprised? Thank you, Elder Gu. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath and thanked Elder Gu immediately. You're welcome. You deserve all the tests that your master left for you. And they're just some corpse puppets. They're nothing to the numerous opportunities in this secret realm, Elder Gu said with a faint smile. But then he continued to look at Jian Wushuang. Su Han, I can give you another treasure in addition to these corpse puppets. That treasure should be of great use to you. But you have to agree to one condition. Jian Wushuang was stunned and looked at him subconsciously. What's the treasure that's of great use to me? I can show it to you first. Elder Gu smiled, but with a flip of his hand, a dark green jade bottle appeared in his hand. He opened the cork of the bottle, and immediately a green elixir the size of an adult thumb appeared in Elder Gu's hand. This is an elixir? Jian Wushuang's expression changed as he stared at the green elixir. He did not know this elixir, but since it was made by Elder Gu, it was definitely not an ordinary item. However, Jian Wushuang did not know what effect it could have on him. Have you heard of the Saint Ascension elixir? Elder Gu looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile. Saint Ascension elixir? Jian Wushuang was stunned and subconsciously shook his head. He had never studied alchemy. All he knew was some widely known elixirs in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. As for this Saint Ascension elixir, he had never heard of it. It's normal that you don't know. This Saint Ascension elixir is located in the center of the absolute beginning divine realm. It's quite famous in the 3rd sky of your realm. However, outside the 3rd sky, in this remote territory of yours, this Saint Ascension elixir should only belong to the legends. Naturally, not many people know about it. Elder Gu smiled faintly. It doesn't matter if you haven't heard about it. I can tell you about its effects now. Jian Wushuang listened carefully. As its name suggests, the Saint Ascension elixir is an elixir that leads to the path of a saint. Its effects are actually similar to the royal gold core of a divine master. The royal gold core can help a divine master breakthrough to become a great divine master, and it can help a great divine master break through his own realm. The Saint Ascension elixir can help a peak great divine master who has been stuck at a bottleneck for a long time breakthrough to the level of an immortal saint. Just as Elder Gu said this, Jian Wushuang's eyes widened. Help a peak great divine master breakthrough to the immortal saint level? That was the immortal saint level. Chapter 2820. Saint Ascension Elixir, what's the chance? Jian Wushuang immediately asked. 10%, Elder Gu said. Of course, for those ordinary divine masters who are unprepared, they still have a 10% chance of breaking through to the Immortal Saint level after taking the Saint Ascension Elixir. But for those powerful Divine Masters who are well prepared and have great potential, there's at least a 30% chance of breaking through to the Immortal Saint level after taking the Saint Ascension Elixir. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was even more shocked. Without any preparation, there was a 10% chance of a breakthrough. With sufficient preparation, there was a 30% chance of a breakthrough? A 30% chance. After all, the Aurus core of the Royal Realm could make a senior Great Divine Master breakthrough to be a peak Great Divine Master, which was also very small. Even so, it was enough to make many Great Divine Masters fight for it, and even kill each other. For example, Elder Tong and Ba Xiong, who had been killed by Jian Wushuang, had directly broken through to be a peak Great Divine Master by taking a gold core of the Royal Realm. A gold core of the Royal Realm was worth at least 100 times, or even 1,000 times more than just normal cultivation. Jian Wushuang had no doubt that once the news of the gold core of the Royal Realm spread, the entire Pil Sun Sacred World, and even the entire Golden Crow 9 realms would be shocked. Countless Great Divine Masters and top experts would fight for the elixir at all costs. Even an invincible Divine Master like the Marquis of 3 would not be able to resist the temptation of the elixir, let alone a peak Great Divine Master. After all, it was too difficult for an ordinary peak Great Divine Master to break through to become an Immortal Saint. Take the Pil Sun Sacred World as an example. The vast Sacred World had an incomparably vast territory, but after so many years, the Pil Sun Sacred World had given birth to an undying sage, and that was the Crimson Rock Sage. However, there were quite a few experts at the Great Deity level in the Pil Sun Sacred World. There were even some peak Great Deity level experts, but they were unable to truly break through to become an undying sage. However, it was difficult to break through to become an undying sage. And once an elixir with a 30% chance of breaking through was placed in front of these Great Divine Masters, it would be strange if these Great Divine Masters did not go crazy. Su Han, your talent is extremely high. Although you haven't reached the peak Great Divine Master level yet, you'll reach it sooner or later. At that time, you'll probably encounter a bottleneck. Even if you can break through, it'll definitely take a long time. And this sacred elixir will help you when the time comes. With your talent and skills, as long as you've accumulated enough divine power, you'll have at least a 50% chance of becoming an Immortal Saint with the help of the elixir. Elder Gu smiled. I can give you the pill now, but you have to agree to one condition. What condition? Jian Wushuang asked. It's simple. I want you to agree to it. To be exact, I want you to swear that if you break through to the Immortal Saint level, you will come to the secret realm and try your best to accept the test left by the Master and get the mantle left by the Master. How about that? Elder Gu said. That's the condition? Jian Wushuang was stunned. He had thought that Elder Gu would make such a harsh condition, but it turned out that he just wanted him to try his best to accept the test left by the Master of the secret realm. In fact, even if Elder Gu did not say anything, Jian Wushuang would definitely come back to the secret realm after he broke through to become an Immortal Saint. After all, this secret realm was left by a powerful rule master and contained endless opportunities. Jian Wushuang also had a certain yearning for opportunities in this secret realm. I agree to this condition. I can swear it now. Jian Wushuang made an oath right in front of Elder Gu. Of course, this oath was not very binding for Jian Wushuang. Even if he broke it later, there would be no harm. However, given Jian Wushuang's character, since he made an oath, he would definitely do his best to fulfill it. Seeing Jian Wushuang make an oath, Elder Gu could not help but smile. Then he waved his hand and handed the Saint Ascension Elixir directly to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang carefully put the Saint Ascension Elixir into his interspatial ring. But he was delighted. Elder Gu was wrong. The Saint Ascension Elixir had some effect on Jian Wushuang, but it was not very useful. He had no choice. He was a perfect chaotic creature, and every breakthrough in his realm was different from ordinary people. For other great divine masters, the gold core of the royal realm was the best elixir for breaking through their own realm. But it was of little use to Jian Wushuang. That was why he had not swallowed any of the 5 royal gold cores he had obtained in the secret realm. Instead, he had used them to recruit experts. If the royal gold core was like that, then the Saint Ascension elixir was the same. Jian Wushuang knew very well that even if he successfully reached the level of a peak great divine master, and his divine power had reached the peak, he would not be able to break through with just a Saint Ascension elixir. The Saint Ascension elixir could at most help him or promote him. However, Jian Wushuang was still quite happy. After all, he did not need the Saint Ascension elixir, but others could. Moreover, Jian Wushuang already had a suitable candidate in his heart. It was Yin Suer. I promised Saint Crimson Rock that I would try my best to help Yin Suer break through her realm and make her an immortal saint. But it's easier said than done. I can't really help her, but now I'm giving her the Saint Ascension elixir, which is the best way to help her. As for whether she can make a breakthrough to become an immortal saint, it depends on her own luck. Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Thank you, Elder Gu. Jian Wushuang thanked Elder Gu. Then he refined the corpse puppets one by one, put them into his interspatial ring, and left the secret realm with the corpse puppet army. The second time he entered the secret realm, Jian Wushuang had gained a lot. He had obtained the corpse puppet army, a Saint Ascension elixir, and his soul power had also been tempered. With the corpse puppet army and the combined power of the Pill Sun Sacred World, I should be able to fight the Heavenly Void army head-on, and even gain the upper hand. Moreover, with the existence of the blood-armored corpse puppet, I'm not afraid of the Marquis of 3 Yin. However, my own strength is still inferior. Since the Heavenly Void army hasn't arrived yet, I have to improve my strength as much as possible. Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. There were only 2 ways for him to improve his strength. Chapter 28-21. The Hellblood Divine Sword. A top-tier heavenly treasure. The first way was to improve his cultivation level. His current cultivation level was only at the peak divine venerate level. It was only because of the black stone in his body that the divine power aura he emitted increased by 2 levels, causing people to think that he was a high-level great divine master. In fact, he was still far from being a high-level great divine master. And once he took another step forward, and broke through from a peak heavenly master to a low-level great divine master, it would definitely be a huge improvement for him. Just in terms of the strength of his divine power, it was a leap. At that time, when he used all his secret techniques, the strength of his divine power would be comparable to that of an invincible divine master, like the Marquis of 3 Yin. It might even be slightly stronger. In addition, he had made his ultimate technique in comprehension of the rules. His understanding of the Tao had reached the limit of a divine master, so his battle strength must be at the level of an invincible divine master. Therefore, if he fought with the Marquis of 3 Yin again, he would not be weaker than the Marquis of 3 Yin, let alone have a high chance of winning. Unfortunately, he would not be able to see it in a short time. After all, it required a lot of divine power to break through from a peak divine master to an elementary great divine master. Although Jian Wushuang had absorbed more than 200,000 saint elixirs, he had only accumulated less than 2/3 of his divine power. Therefore, he estimated that he needed to absorb at least 150,000 saint elixirs before he could break through. However, under such circumstances, he could not find so many saint elixirs. Naturally, he could not break through in a short time. As for the second path, reincarnation sword formation, Jian Wushuang could not help narrowing his eyes. Jian Wushuang had already experienced how powerful the reincarnation sword formation created by Sword Master Tongxin was. Moreover, he had used the second reincarnation sword formation for a long time, because the 9 Netherblood divine swords, which were the magic weapons that formed the reincarnation sword formation, were too low level. They were only 9 standard magic weapons at the level of ordinary heavenly treasures, so they could not fully display the power of the reincarnation sword formation. Therefore, the reincarnation sword formation had not played a big role in the previous battles. In fact, Jian Wushuang knew that the power of the sword formation was awe-inspiring. Moreover, he had put all his efforts into space-time swordsmanship and did not delve into samsara swordsmanship. The samsara sword formation purely reflected his comprehension of the samsara rules. Only when the samsara sword formation was combined with the space-time swordsmanship that he created himself could he fully utilize his comprehension of the space-time and samsara rules. This was his peak battle strength. And now, he urgently needed a stronger sword-type standard magic weapon. Starpoint Pavilion. Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with a bright light. Starpoint Pavilion was one of the super forces in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. It was extremely transcendent. It was publicly recognized as the #1 chamber of commerce in the 9 realms of the Golden Crow. It had many branches in various realms, but it only dealt in business and never participated in the fights between the various realms. Previously, when Jian Wushuang dealt with the 230-pound Blood Wilderness Emperor Essence and the Battle Saber of the Holy Treasure level, he did not choose the Star Pavilion because the 2 treasures were too valuable. If he sold them to the Star Pavilion, he would not get the most benefits. However, if he wanted to buy some treasures, the Star Pavilion was the best choice. The Danyang continent was the core of the Danyang sacred world. Naturally, there were 3 branches of the Star Pavilion here. Jian Wushuang went directly to one of the branches. The deacon in the branch quickly recognized him, and then the branch manager came to pick him up personally. In a secret room, Master Sword1, what can the Star Pavilion do for you? The purple-robed manager of the branch stood in front of Jian Wushuang with a humble smile and a hint of respect in his words and actions. This was normal. In the Pil Sun sacred world, everyone who had some knowledge knew Sword1, the chief of the Sword Alliance. He was widely recognized as the #1 expert in the Pil Sun sacred world. The purple-robed supervisor was only an advanced divine master. Although he was from the Point Star Pavilion, the difference in strength still made him somewhat respectful of Jian Wushuang. I need a few standard divine weapons of sword type. The higher level ones should be at least superior divine treasures, Jian Wushuang said. Superior divine weapons of sword type? The purple-robed supervisor's expression changed. I've been using the Netherblood divine sword before, but it's only an ordinary divine treasure. So I wonder if there's a superior divine treasure level Netherblood divine sword in the Point Star Pavilion? Jian Wushuang asked. He had used the Netherblood divine sword when he used the reincarnation sword formation. He was the most familiar with the use of the Netherblood divine sword. If possible, he would like to use the Netherblood divine sword to perform the reincarnation sword formation at the level of a superior divine treasure. I do have a Netherblood divine sword at the level of a superior divine treasure in the Star Pavilion. However, the Netherblood divine sword is very famous among all the standard divine weapons of the sword category. Its power is also extreme, so its value is naturally higher, the purple-robed supervisor said. How much? Jian Wushuang asked. If it's a superior divine treasure level magic weapon, our Starpoint Pavilion will only sell it at the price of holy elixirs. So for example, a superior divine treasure level Ming Shui divine family requires 500 holy elixirs. Can you accept this price, sir? The purple-robed supervisor said with a smile. 500 holy elixirs for one. Jian Wushuang frowned. As far as he knew, an ordinary superior divine treasure level offensive divine weapon only cost around 300 to 400 sacred elixirs. A standard divine weapon should have a lower value. However, the underworld blood divine sword was powerful, so it was exceptional among divine weapons of the same level. Therefore, it was worth 500 sacred elixirs. 500 sacred elixirs is acceptable, Jian Wushuang said. How many do you need, sir? The purple-robed supervisor looked at him with a smile. Jian Wushuang pondered. He had only needed 9 Netherblood divine swords to form the reincarnation sword formation. But that was because he had only used the first and second sword formations. However, he needed 18 sword-type magic weapons from the third sword formation to form the sword formation. I've already controlled the second reincarnation sword formation long ago. Furthermore, with my current understanding of the laws of reincarnation, I can completely unleash the power of the second reincarnation, sword formation. Next, I will naturally try to control the third sword formation. At that time, I will need a total of 18 divine swords. Other than that, just 18 is still a little too little. Previously, when I fought with Palace Master Nanwu, 9 Netherblood divine swords were destroyed by him. This has reminded me, from now on, when I use the reincarnation sword formation to fight with others, if I clash head-on, the sword alliance will inevitably collapse due to the opponent's power. Furthermore, the divine swords that form the sword alliance might also be damaged. Therefore, I have to prepare a few more Netherblood divine swords. So it's better to be prepared. Chapter 28-22. The third level of the Samsara sword formation. Jian Wushuang thought to himself, and quickly made up his mind. Give me 20 Netherblood divine swords in the superior heavenly treasure level. This is 10,000 saint elixirs. Please count them. Jian Wushuang took out an interspatial ring. Previously, when the 4 superior forces had submitted, Jian Wushuang had obtained a large number of saint elixirs in one go, including the ones that had killed Palace Master Nanwu and the others. There were more than 200,000 saint elixirs. He had refined most of the saint elixirs, but he had kept some for himself. There were exactly 10,000 saint elixirs, and he had used them all. Taking the interspatial ring, the purple-robed supervisor glanced at it and nodded slightly. Please wait for a moment, sir. I'll send you the underworld blood divine swords right away. The purple-robed supervisor went down to prepare. He appeared in front of Jian Wushuang 2 hours later and handed him the interspatial ring containing 20 Netherblood divine swords of the superior divine treasure level. After confirming that there were no mistakes, Jian Wushuang left the Point Star Pavilion directly. In the middle of a vast and boundless mountain range, there were all kinds of mountains standing in this mountain range. These mountains had yellow and dry hair. This was a desolate mountain range that was usually uninhabited. Jian Wushuang was standing in the void in the middle of the mountain range. He slowly raised his hand. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 9 black swords with endless reincarnation power appeared out of thin air and floated in front of him. Each of the 9 underworld blood divine swords was extremely powerful, even slightly stronger than ordinary superior heavenly treasures. The power of reincarnation contained in the swords was naturally stronger. Go! Jian Wushuang said softly. The 9 underworld blood divine swords in front of him instantly turned into 9 streams of black light and shot out through the void. Their speed was the same, but when the 9 underworld blood divine swords pierced through the void, their power was much stronger than when Jian Wushuang had only used ordinary divine treasures. Boom, boom, boom. Each stream of light pierced through the void with a shocking sound. Under Jian Wushuang's control, the 9 Netherblood divine swords split into 9 different directions and attacked the 9 different mountains on the side. Bang, bang, bang. A total of 9 loud sounds rang out almost at the same time. The 9 mountains, which were originally lofty, were pierced through at the same time. As a result, a huge spiral-shaped hole was pierced through the center of the mountain, but the mountain did not collapse. As expected, I am the most familiar with the control of the underworld blood divine sword and the perfect control of power. The 9 underworld blood divine swords flew out at the same time, but not a trace of divine power leaked out. Jian Wushuang smiled. Not only is the control of power the most perfect, but the power of the underworld blood divine sword is also much stronger than before. I'm not using any secret techniques right now. I'm just relying on my own divine power and my comprehension of the laws of reincarnation to drive the 9 Netherblood divine swords with all my might. Any one of them would be as powerful as an attack from a high-level great deity. If I were to go all out and use all my secret techniques and trump cards to control the 9 Netherblood divine swords, I'm afraid that any one of them would have the power of a peak great deity. By then, the 9 Netherblood divine swords will be equivalent to 9 divine masters at the peak. In addition, I haven't really used the sword formation yet. Jian Wushuang smiled and moved his mind. 9 swords in one, all things sync. Buzz. The 9 Netherblood divine swords that were originally scattered were completely combined in the blink of an eye. In an instant, a huge black tree that was emitting a shocking power immediately formed. It was also a huge black tree, but the moment this huge black tree appeared, it was surrounded by many mysterious reincarnation vortexes. The power it carried was far from what it could compare to in the past. Bang! The huge black tree suddenly struck out, directly striking the largest mountain in front of it. The giant mountain was instantly pierced through by the impact of the giant black tree. Under the violent impact, the entire mountain immediately collapsed. This power is at least 10 times stronger than when I used 9 ordinary divine treasures, the Underworld Blood Divine Sword. Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with a bright light. This was normal. Ordinary divine treasures were 2 levels weaker than superior divine treasures, so the difference in power was shocking. When I fought Palace Master Nan Wu, I tried my best to use the 2nd level of the Samsara Sword formation, but he easily defeated me. Now, with the same level of divine power, I should be able to suppress him with this sword formation, Jian Wushuang muttered. Moreover, this was only the 2nd level of the sword formation. With Jian Wushuang's current understanding of the Samsara rule, he could try to master the 3rd level of the sword formation. Although the Heaven Void Palace Master has given the order, it will take some time for the Heaven Void army to gather and rush from the Heaven Void world to the territory of the Pil Sun Sacred World. During this time, I can try my best to master the 3rd level of the Samsara sword formation. Jian Wushuang made up his mind. Immediately, he began to practice the 3rd reincarnation sword formation in this desolate mountain range. The 3rd reincarnation sword formation was called Reincarnation Drunk. Under normal circumstances, one could only fully control this move when one's comprehension of the reincarnation rule reached the limit of a divine master. However, Jian Wushuang was very close to this level now, so he could try to achieve this step in the process of mastering the exercise. Let's begin. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang raised his hand again. Another 9 Netherblood divine swords flew out. So including the previous 9, there were a total of 18. The 18 Netherblood divine swords were the basic conditions for forming the 3rd reincarnation sword formation. Condense. As Jian Wushuang pointed from afar, the 18 Netherblood divine swords instantly began to condense in the void in front of him. The 18 Underworld Blood divine swords condensed at a very fast speed. In the blink of an eye, a brand new black divine sword was about to be formed. But at the last moment, with a bang, the many divine swords scattered. Did I fail? Jian Wushuang looked at this scene, but he was not discouraged at all. He knew very well that it would take time for him to truly control the 3rd sword formation. It was impossible for him to succeed in the 1st attempt. Continue. Jian Wushuang regrouped and soon began the 2nd attempt. Bang! The sword formation collapsed for the 2nd time. Bang! 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 The 3rd, 4th, 5th time. Jian Wushuang kept trying. He failed again and again, summarizing his experience and the unique laws contained in the sword formation. But most importantly, while he was practicing, he was also comprehending the reincarnation rules. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, 1 year and 4 months had passed. Chapter 28-23 had arrived. It was still in the center of the desolate mountain range. Buzz. A total of 18 Underworld Blood divine swords, each of which carried the vast power of the reincarnation rule, gathered together in the blink of an eye. A brand new black divine sword suddenly condensed. This black divine sword was 5 meters long, but its body was very thin, and the power of the reincarnation rule was even more terrifying. The black divine sword trembled slightly, as if it was not very stable. Go! Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with a fierce light. The 5-meter-long black magic sword suddenly burst out, leaving a perfect arc in the void. It was like a beautiful black sword light passing by. This sword light was also fascinating. The 3rd level of the Samsara sword formation, Samsara intoxication. The essence contained in this move was the same as the 7th move of the spacetime sword skill, intoxication. It was intoxicating. Boom! The beautiful black divine sword pierced through 3 mountains in front of it. Its terrifying power was earth-shaking. After a long while it finally stopped. After it stopped, the black divine sword shook a little, as if it was about to collapse, but in the end it held on. After practicing for 1 year and 4 months, and studying it carefully for so long, I finally managed to control the 3rd level of the Samsara sword formation. Jian Wushuang murmured with a smile on his face. He had been staying here for 1 year and 4 months. During this time, he had practiced the sword formation countless times, but he had always failed. He had failed countless times, but every time he failed, he became more familiar with the heavy sword formation. But these days, he could finally use the 3rd level of the sword formation, and the sword formation would not collapse immediately after it was used. It could be said that he had barely managed to control the sword formation. The reincarnation sword formation was more and more powerful. The power of the 3rd level of the sword formation did not disappoint him. It was much more powerful than the 2nd level. Previously, when I fought with the Marquis of San Yin with all my strength, his speed was slightly suppressed, and his power was even weaker. However, I was unable to use the reincarnation sword formation at that time, and I was unable to fully display my understanding of the reincarnation rule. But now it's different. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands. Now that he had mastered the 3rd level of the Samsara sword formation, his power was extremely powerful, enough to confront the Marquis of 3 Yin head-on. If he combined his swordsmanship with the space-time rule and the Samsara rule, he was confident that he could fight the Marquis of 3 Yin. I'm looking forward to fighting the Marquis of 3 Yin again. Jian Wushuang smiled, but then he shook his head. There's no rush. I just barely mastered the 3rd sword formation. There's still a lot of room for improvement. I can continue to master it. Jian Wushuang did not think much, and immediately began to master the sword formation. Unfortunately, the Heaven Void Palace clearly did not intend to give him so much time. Mr. Sword One, come to Crimson Rock Castle quickly. Yin Suer had already sent a message. Jian Wushuang had told Yin Suer that he was cultivating in seclusion and would not pay attention to the outside world. Unless the Heavenly Void Army came, he should not be disturbed. Now that Yin Suer had sent a message to him, it meant that the Heavenly Void Army was coming. It's only been a year, but the Heavenly Void Army has already arrived? It's really fast. Jian Wushuang sighed. Although he was not completely familiar with the 3rd reincarnation sword formation, he did not continue to practice it. Instead, he immediately went to Crimson Rock Castle. When he arrived at Crimson Rock Castle, Jian Wushuang met Yin Suer. Mr. Sword One, I have received news that the Heavenly Void Army has entered the ice field a few days ago. It won't be long before they set foot in the territory of our Pil Sun sacred world, Yin Suer said. Ice field. Jian Wushuang's heart stirred. After knowing that the sacred Sundan world was about to have a great war with the Heaven Void world, he carefully checked some information about the Heaven Void world. He knew that the sacred Sundan world and the Heaven Void world were connected to each other, and the place where they intersected was the ice field. The ice field was jointly occupied by the 2 worlds. The Heavenly Void Army only needed to cross the ice field to reach the territory of the sacred Sundan world. I thought that the Heavenly Void Army would secretly use the space passage to appear in a certain territory of the Pil Sun sacred world and launch a surprise attack. I didn't expect that they would pass through the ice field and launch a direct attack on the Pil Sun sacred world, Jian Wushuang said in surprise. Jian Wushuang knew very well that since the Heavenly Void Palace had been operating in the Pil Sun sacred world for a period of time and had a relationship with Blood Thunder King, it was impossible that there was no space passage leading directly to the Heavenly Void world in the Pil Sun sacred world. Mr. Sword One, you don't know. Yin Suer smiled. There is indeed a space passage connecting the 2 worlds. Not only has the Heaven Void world left a space passage in the sacred Sun world, but the sacred Sundan world has also left a space passage in the Heaven Void world. However, it's not easy to activate the space passage connecting the 2 worlds. It's not a big deal to teleport 1 or 2 people, but this is a war between the 2 worlds. The Heavenly Void Army has mobilized half of its forces and more than 1,000 experts. It's impossible to teleport through the space passage. That will consume too many resources. Even the master of the Heavenly Void Palace might not be able to afford it. Is that so? Jian Wushuang understood. The farther the space tunnel was, the more expensive it would be to teleport. It was not easy to use the space tunnel that connected the two worlds. We can't rely on the space tunnel. The Heavenly Void Army can only pass through the ice field and rush toward our sacred Sundan world. With their speed, they will arrive in less than half a month. We should go to the edge of the ice field and get ready to block the Heavenly Void Army in the ice field, Yin Suer said. Okay, I'll inform the Sword Alliance right away. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly and immediately sent a message to Elder Tong. Because the Sword Alliance had stopped expanding, Jian Wushuang called the top experts from before. In addition, the Divine Sword Army in the Sword Alliance had developed rapidly over the years. Although it was still only 500 people, they were all elites and powerful divine masters. After all, the Divine Void Army was not entirely made up of divine masters. Most of them were divine masters. The Divine Sword Army could also have a certain amount of combat strength in this war. It could be said that Jian Wushuang had sent out all his forces in this war. However, the Sword Alliance was not the only one to send out all their forces. So was Crimson Rock Castle. In addition, Crimson Rock Castle had been actively preparing during this period of time. It had invited experts from all sides and received the support of certain experts and forces in the Pil Sun Sacred World. Now that they had received Yin Suer's instructions, they naturally left together. In less than a few days, many experts from the Pil Sun Sacred World had already gathered at the edge of the ice fields and were quietly waiting. Chapter 28-24. Great disparity in strength. The void was filled with a bone-chilling cold wind. In front of them was a vast expanse of snow-white, endless glaciers that stretched as far as the eye could see. This was the ice field, the boundary between the Pil Sun Sacred World and the Heaven Void World. In the void, countless figures stood there, the cold wind blowing. But no one felt cold or uncomfortable. These people were, of course, many experts from the Pil Sun Sacred World, led by Yin Suer and Jian Wushuang. At this moment, all of them were focused on the void in front of them. They're here, Yin Suer suddenly said. The experts present all became serious. Under everyone's gaze, an orderly army slowly flew over from the void in front of them. This army was not large, only a few thousand people. However, every single soldier in the army exuded an extremely powerful aura. Most importantly, these auras were all connected to each other, forming a complete entity. They were all wearing silver battle armors. Under the illumination of the glacier below, they looked awe-inspiring. They were clearly a huge army, with more than 1,000 people. However, they gave off the feeling that they were just one person. They rushed over from afar at the same speed. When they got close, they stopped in unison. Then, the army of more than 1,000 soldiers raised their heads at the same time, and a murderous aura suddenly swept out. This murderous aura was so strong that even the great divine masters in the camp of the Pil Sun Sacred World could not help changing their expressions when they felt it. What a powerful army! Jian Wushuang was also secretly amazed. This was a truly invincible army. It had not even started yet, but the feeling it gave people was completely different. The Divine Sword Army that he created might look like it was made up of elite divine masters, but there were some military formations. In fact, Jian Wushuang knew very well that the combat strength of the Divine Sword Army was not just 1 or 2 levels lower than that of the Heavenly Void Army. After all, the Divine Sword Army had not been established for a long time and had experienced a lot of killing. However, the Heavenly Void Army was different. It had been established a long time ago. It had followed the master of the Heavenly Void Palace to expand its territory. It had experienced countless killings, replaced generations of experts, and was still able to stay in the Heavenly Void Army. Not only were they powerful, but they were also the best of the best. The key was their cooperation and tacit understanding, which was far from what an ordinary army could compare with. Even if it was the Crimson Rock army at its peak, they might still be able to barely compete with the Heavenly Void army. But now, they were still far from it. Seeing the Heavenly Void army appear in the sky, the experts of the Pil Sun Sacred Worlds camp all had solemn expressions. Yin Suer's gaze sank. Something's wrong. What's wrong? Yun Shan, Palace Master Sijun, and the others immediately looked over. The aura of the divine power isn't right. Yin Suer immediately said. According to the information I received, that Heavenly Void Palace Master only ordered to gather half of the Heavenly Void army, which is 1,000 people. 1,000-man army should only have 100 great divine masters. But now I can sense more than 150 great divine masters, auras from the opposing camp. Close to 160. Hearing this, Yun Shan and the others immediately released their soul power and started to sense it. The result was obviously the same as Yin Suer's. There are close to 160 great divine masters' auras. What's going on? Palace Master Sijun frowned. If I'm not wrong, not only did that Heavenly Void Palace Master send the Heavenly Void army, he also sent a portion of great divine lords from the Heavenly Void Palace. In addition to Chun Kong and the others who have been staying in our Pil Sun Sacred World, he only managed to gather close to 160 great divine lords. Yin Suer said in a low voice. As soon as these words were said, all the experts from the Pil Sun Sacred World sucked in a breath of cold air. There were close to 160 great divine masters. Was this a joke? Moreover, they quickly sensed that among the 160 great divine masters, only 60% were beginner great divine masters. The rest of them were advanced great divine masters and peak great divine masters, especially the peak great divine paragons. When they counted them one by one, they discovered that there were a total of 15 peak great divine paragons from the Heavenly Void Temple, 15 peak great divine masters, 140 advanced and beginner great divine masters, and an invincible Heavenly Void army. Their lineup was actually this powerful? Looking at the turn of events in the Pil Sun Sacred World, even though Yin Suer had been trying her best to rope in experts from various factions to participate in the battle, it was too short of time after all. Furthermore, Crimson Rock Castle's WeChat was already insufficient. Up until now, only about 70 great divine masters had been persuaded, including those from Crimson Rock Castle and the Sword Alliance. There was only about 70 great divine masters present. That's right, there were about 70 great divine masters. In terms of quality, most of them were just beginner great divine masters. This was all that Yin Suer could gather. As for the number of divine masters, there were quite a number of them. The Crimson Rock Legion, the Divine Sword Legion, and the legions created by the 4 top factions had all been brought over. There were also 4,000 Divine Masters legions that were temporarily formed by many Divine Masters from various factions. However, although there were many deity masters, they did not cooperate with each other. They had the experience of fighting together. If they were to really fight, their combat strength would probably be far inferior to the Heavenly Void army that only had 1,000 people. The difference in strength between the two sides' lineup was simply too great. Damn it. I originally thought that the Heavenly Void army that only had 1,000 people would arrive. With the combat strength that our Pil Sun Sacred World has gathered now, we should have the strength to fight. I did not expect that the Heavenly Void Temple Master would actually send more than 50 great deity masters. Yin Suer clenched her teeth tightly. 50 great divine masters? That was too much power. The extra 50 great divine masters were beyond her expectations and beyond the scope of the sacred Sundan world. Yin Suer was not the only one. Many experts from the sacred Sundan world had already figured out the difference in strength between their camps. All of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Jian Wushuang was the only one who looked calm. There are nearly 160 great divine masters. The master of the Heaven Void Temple is quite generous. Jian Wushuang even chuckled. Mr. Sword One, how can you still laugh when there is such a huge difference between the two camps? Do you have a way to deal with it? Yun Shan, who was beside him, noticed the change in Jian Wushuang's expression and immediately said, "If you have a way to do it, you can just deal with it." Jian Wushuang smiled. "Mr. Sword One, this battle is not a trivial matter. It concerns the life and death of our Pil-Sun sacred world. If you have any preparations, please take them out as soon as possible," Yin Suer said anxiously. Chapter 28-25. In front of the battle, many experts from the Pil-Sun sacred world were staring at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's prestige in the Pil-Sun sacred world was too high. Many people knew that the reason why Crimson Rock Castle was able to win the previous battles and regain control of the Pil-Sun sacred world was mainly because of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang had created one miracle after another in the Pil-Sun sacred world. Now that both sides were at such a huge disadvantage, these people also hoped that Jian Wushuang could create another miracle. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang could not help but smile. "I have indeed prepared some methods for this battle. If they are used well, and everyone works together, they should be able to contend with the experts of the Heavenly Void Temple in front of them. They might even have a good chance of winning. As for what these methods are, I won't say for now. I will use them when the time comes." Hearing this, the surrounding people nodded heavily. At the same time, they felt more confident. If Jian Wushuang did not prepare any tricks, they would not be able to fight against him with their current strength. However, since Jian Wushuang had prepared in advance and was facing all kinds of legends about Jian Wushuang, they had some confidence in their hearts. However, Yin Suer and Yin Shan looked at each other in dismay. They did not think that Jian Wushuang really had trump cards. Instead, they thought that Jian Wushuang was pretending to be calm so that the morale of their camp would not completely collapse. In the opposite camp, in the Heavenly Void Army, the sergeants of the Heavenly Void Army all looked cold and solemn. At the front, many great divine masters of the Heavenly Void Palace gathered together. The leader was a burly man in dark green armor. This burly man was the commander of the Heavenly Void Army. As the commander of the Heavenly Void Army, although he was only a peak great divine master, his position in the Heavenly Void Palace was not inferior to that of the Marquis of 3 Yin, who was an invincible divine master. Behind this commander of the Heavenly Void Army, there were a few silver-armored men standing there. These people were the generals of the Heavenly Void Army. At this moment, many experts of the Heavenly Void Temple were also looking at the scene in front of them with interest. It seems that the Pil-Sun sacred world has really declined. They were given so much time to prepare. Yet this Crimson Rock Castle only managed to gather so few experts. There are less than 70 great divine masters? A general could not help but snicker. The people beside them also revealed looks of disdain. After all, this was a world. Logically speaking, it should be easy to casually bring out more than 100 great divine masters. However, the Crimson Rock Castle had so much time to prepare. Yet they only managed to gather less than 70 great divine masters. This number was indeed a little too few. It was very normal for the people from the Heavenly Void Temple to look down on them. One had to know that in the Heavenly Void world, the Heavenly Void Temple Master's words carried weight. He did not need to prepare much. With just a word of instruction, he had mobilized far more great divine masters than the Pil-Sun sacred world. The Pil-Sun sacred world, when Sage Redstone was still alive, was worthy of our Heavenly Void world's attention. But now it's too weak. This time, I thought that we would have a tough battle with the Pil-Sun sacred world. But now, it seems like we don't have the chance. Just based on the experts gathered in the Pil-Sun sacred world, our Heavenly Void Army only needs to charge forward. And these experts of the sacred Pil-Sun world will be defeated. Many experts of the Heavenly Void Temple were chatting casually. Not many people took these experts of the Pil-Sun sacred world seriously. Only the commander of the Heavenly Void Army had an incomparably cold expression. Although the battle strength of the Pil-Sun sacred world's camp cannot compare to ours, their strength is still not weak. Not only do we have to defeat them, but we also have to strive for the least casualties. Marquis of 3 Yin, the commander of the Heavenly Void Army, suddenly looked at the Marquis of 3 Yin who was standing quietly at the side. The Marquis of Three Ean's position in the Heavenly Void Palace was extremely high, second only to the Master of the Heavenly Void Palace. However, the commander of the Heavenly Void Army was also the right-hand man of the Master of the Heavenly Void Palace. The two of them could talk to each other as equals. "What's the matter?" The Marquis of Three Ean swept his gaze over. "I heard that you fought with the strongest expert of the Pil-Sun's sacred world before, and you had the absolute advantage." The commander of the Heavenly Void Army asked. "That's true." The Marquis of Three Ean nodded. "That's good. I need you to come out now and fight with the strongest expert of the Pil-Sun's sacred world, in front of the experts from both sides." The commander of the Heavenly Void Army said. "Fight again? Are you trying to?" The Marquis of Three Ean frowned. He had already guessed the intentions of the commander of the Heavenly Void Army. "That's right. I want to weaken the morale of the Pil-Sun's sacred world camp." The Heavenly Void Army commander said. "I've heard of the strongest person in the Pil-Sun's sacred world before. He seems to be called Sword One, and he's only a senior great divine venerate. However, his prestige in the Pil-Sun's sacred world is extremely high. Previously, the Pil-Sun's sacred world had endless internal strife. It was because of his help that Een Sewer was able to turn the tides. Right now, once the great war between our heavenly oasis world and the Pil-Sun's sacred world breaks out, even if the experts of the Pil-Sun's sacred world are no match for him, they will most likely fight to the end with all their might. This is because most of them will believe that this sword will once again turn the tide of the battle. Even if this Sword One doesn't have the strength, as long as he opens his mouth and casually says something, such as saying that he still has some trump cards that he has yet to use, the experts of the Pil-Sun's sacred world will most likely believe him. At that time, when they start fighting madly, it will be quite troublesome for us. That's why I asked you to attack now and kill Sword One directly in front of the experts of the Pil-Sun's sacred world, or even severely injure him. No matter what, you just need to defeat him or suppress him. As long as the people of the Pil-Sun's sacred world see their strongest expert showing signs of defeat, their morale will plummet. They won't be too crazy to resist, and it will save us a lot of trouble. I understand. The Marquis of Three Ean nodded slightly. He also knew the intention of this Heavenly Void Army commander. The Marquis of Three Ean did not hesitate too much and immediately moved forward. The Marquis of Three Ean crossed a distance and stopped in the middle of the two camps. His cold eyes looked at the many experts of the Pil-Sun's sacred world. "Sword One." His magnificent voice spread across the entire ice field. In the Pil-Sun's sacred world, the experts immediately looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's expression was strange. He immediately walked forward. "Marquis of Three Ean, what do you want to do?" Jian Wushuang asked in a deep voice. "Nothing. It's just that the last time I fought in your Sword Alliance's headquarters, I didn't have a good time. Now that I see it again, I can't help but want to fight with you again," the Marquis of Three Ean said with a faint smile. Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's pupils suddenly shrank. Chapter 28-26. Another battle with the Marquis of Three Ean. Another battle? Jian Wushuang looked at Marquis Three Ean with interest. He was not stupid. Now that the experts of the two worlds were fighting, the Marquis of Three Ean had come to fight with him before the battle had even begun. It was clear that he wanted to defeat Jian Wushuang and give a blow to the morale of the camp of the Pil-Sun's sacred world, so as to give the Heavenly Void Army a greater advantage. If it were more than a year ago, Jian Wushuang would have never accepted the challenge. But now, to be honest, he really wanted to have a face-to-face fight with the Marquis of Three Ean. Now is the chance. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Jian Wushuang's voice shook the sky. He had already agreed directly. "You are so bold." The corners of the Marquis of Three Ean's mouth curled up slightly. When Een Sewer and the others saw Jian Wushuang accept the challenge, their expressions changed. They all knew that Jian Wushuang was not as strong as the Marquis of Three Ean. The last time they fought, more than a year ago, although the Marquis of Three Ean could not defeat Jian Wushuang. If they fought again now, It would be a blow to the morale of the experts in the camp of the Pil Sun Sacred World. Mr. Sword One. Yin Suer could not help but look at Jian Wushuang. Don't worry. Since I dare to fight, I'm sure of it. Jian Wushuang smiled. Seeing this, Yin Suer did not say anything more. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang rushed forward and met the Marquis of 3 Yin in the middle of the two camps. Sword One, I know you're a real genius, but no matter how great a genius you are, I'm afraid your strength won't improve much in just a year. The Marquis of 3 Yin stared at Jian Wushuang. You'll know when you try. Jian Wushuang smiled. Rumble. Boundless golden divine power surged out from his body, and a 30,000-meter-tall golden emperor phantom soon appeared behind him. The 7-star power in his body also began to be activated. Jian Wushuang used the 7-star secret skill, Punishment Divine Realm Expert, and the 9 luminary star armor in an instant, and his battle strength reached its peak. At the same time, buzz, layers of domains were completely unleashed. The Golden Light Realm, Star Armor Realm, Punishment Prison, and Sword Principal World were perfectly combined, and they pressed toward the Marquis of 3 Yin crazily. This move again? Even the power is the same. It seems that you haven't improved at all in the past year. The Marquis of 3 Yin sneered, and a pair of scarlet claw gloves appeared in his hands. The Marquis of 3 Yin put on the claw gloves. There were 5 sharp claws on the scarlet claw gloves, which were as long as the sharp claws of a fierce beast, and extremely sharp and cold. If you have any tricks, just use them, Jian Wushuang said calmly. As you wish. The Marquis of 3 Yin gave a strange smile, but his body suddenly moved. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Numerous afterimages flashed in the void in front of Jian Wushuang. Even under the crazy pressure of the realm, the Marquis of 3 Yin's speed was still far faster than an ordinary person's. Even compared to Jian Wushuang's ultimate speed, he was a little faster. His figure appeared in front of Jian Wushuang like a ghost, and then he mercilessly clawed out with his ice-cold claws. The void seemed to be torn apart. Humph! Jian Wushuang snorted, and the blood mountain sword in his hand immediately went up to meet him. Clang! 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 The dense sounds of collision kept ringing out, and both of them had reached their maximum speed. Fast, really fast. At least, most of the experts from both sides, who were watching the battle, could not catch their shadows. Haha! It's the same scene as the last one and the same ending. The Marquis of 3 Yin laughed loudly in the fierce battle. The same scene? Really? Jian Wushuang gave a strange smile. The two sides continued to compete in speed, but suddenly, Jian Wushuang raised his left hand slightly. Swish, 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 swish. Streams of black light shot out like black lightning. The speed of these black streams of light was strange, and the key was their power. The Marquis of 3 Yin, who was relying on his own speed to suppress Jian Wushuang, could not help but change his expression. He also subconsciously retreated. As he retreated, he waved his sharp claws and sent the black streams of light flying. After the black streams of light were sent flying, they quickly floated in the void in front of Jian Wushuang. It was only then that they could clearly see that the black streams of light were black divine swords that emitted a powerful aura and the power of reincarnation. The black divine swords lined up in a row and floated there. After careful counting, there were a total of 18 of them. This is... The Marquis of 3 Yin frowned as he looked at the 18 black divine swords. This is a sword formation. I'm afraid you didn't see it when I fought with you last time. Now, I'll show you the power of my sword formation, Jian Wushuang said with a faint smile. In an instant, under his control, 18 black divine swords burst out. They turned into 18 bolts of black lightning and burst out. Boom! 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 Under Jian Wushuang's many secret skill trump cards, each black divine sword was accompanied by powerful power. Each black divine sword's power was close to the strength of a peak great divine master. But the key point was that there were a total of 18 black divine swords. The 18 black divine swords madly rushed toward the Marquis of 3 Yin from all directions. Even though the Marquis of 3 Yin was powerful, he had to defend with all his strength at this moment. Clang! 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 After a series of dense metal colliding sounds, the 18 black divine swords were sent flying again by the Marquis of 3 It's just a little more, but it's not that powerful. Do you think you can do anything to me with such a method? The Marquis of 3's voice was cold, and a layer of blood-colored fog had already spread out from his body. It's too early for you to be happy. Jian Wushuang sneered and then buzz. Buzz. Under Jian Wushuang's control, the black swords directly overlapped and combined at an amazing speed. The 18 long swords gathered in two directions at the same time. Each of the 9 swords became one, and finally, they formed 2 sword formations at the same time. In the second level of the Samsara sword formation, everything was heavy. The power of the Samsara sword formation was powerful. Although the second level of the sword formation could be formed by controlling 9 divine swords, it required a lot of divine power to control only one sword formation. It also required 18 divine swords to control 2 sword formations at the same time. Only Jian Wushuang, who had perfect control over the sword formation and extremely strong divine power and consciousness, could do this. The 2 sword formations consisted of 2 giant black trees, each of which carried a shocking power. In a flash, they attacked the Marquis of 3 from both sides. Chapter 28-27. Drunken Samsara. Although there were many black divine swords, the Marquis of 3 did not think much of their power. But now, as these black divine swords formed a sword formation, and the 2 giant black trees charged at them, even the Marquis of 3 did not dare to underestimate their power. Boom! Boom! The 2 huge black trees were charging at them from both sides. The blood-colored fog on the Marquis of 3's body surged, but his right hand was swung out like lightning. 2 claws appeared one after another, and each claw was blood-colored. In the void, 2 blood-colored lights seemed to flash out explosively. These 2 blood-colored lights truly tore apart the heaven and earth, and in the blink of an eye, they struck the 2 huge black trees. Bang! Bang! The 2 giant black trees were sent flying again. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang was not angry at all. Instead, he smiled. Under his control, the 2 giant black trees immediately disintegrated and turned back into black magic swords. Condense! Jian Wushuang spoke again and uttered a word. The 18 black magic swords condensed again, but this time, 18 of them condensed at the same time. Buzz! A faint humming sound, like the sound of a sword, rang out slowly. A brand new 5-meter-long, extremely thin black divine sword appeared between heaven and earth. The 18 black divine swords gathered together. This brand new black divine sword was filled with a frightening amount of power of the law of reincarnation. The sword intent and power it contained were even more shocking. This sword formation. The Marquis of 3's pupils shrank as he looked at the newly formed sword formation. If the 2 sword formations that Jian Wushuang had formed at the same time only made him take them seriously, then the newly formed sword formation was so powerful that even he changed his expression. The power contained in this sword formation had definitely reached the level of an invincible divine master. Sword 1 has never displayed such a powerful sword formation when he fought with me last time. But now, it has only been more than a year. The Marquis of 3 frowned and could not believe it. However, no matter how much he did not believe it, the truth was right in front of him. Kill! Jian Wushuang shouted, and the 5-meter-long black magic sword, which was emitting a shocking power, instantly shot out through the void. The black magic sword left a perfect arc in the void, giving people the feeling that it was a beautiful black sword light. The sword light was absolutely beautiful and intoxicating. It was the 3rd level of the Samsara sword formation, Samsara intoxication. Humph! The Marquis of 3 snorted and suddenly rushed forward, gathering vast divine power in his hand. Chi! The blood-red claw was slightly clenched, and it brought with it the blood-red power that filled the sky as it slashed out like lightning. Heart-ripping divine claw. The Marquis of 3's gaze was cold, and he had already used one of his 2 ultimate moves, the heart-ripping divine claw. The beautiful black divine sword was incomparably swift and fierce, and in the blink of an eye, it collided head-on with the blood-red claw. This collision immediately caused the sound of metal colliding to ring out. There was not much divine power fluctuation, because the two divine powers had almost worn each other out when they collided. The black divine sword shook slightly, and then moved to the side. The Marquis of Three Ean's eyes narrowed. The tremendous impact force contained in the black divine sword forced him to take a few steps back. After a few steps, the Marquis of Three Ean regained his balance, but his face had become extremely ugly. Marquis of Three Ean, how do you feel? Jian Wushuang stood in the distance and looked at the Marquis of Three Ean with a sneer on his face. Sword 1, don't be so proud. Don't think that I can't do anything to you with this sword formation, the Marquis of Three Ean said coldly. You're still stubborn? Jian Wushuang smiled disdainfully. Since the sword formation can't do anything to you, what about this sword formation and my swordsmanship? As soon as Jian Wushuang's voice fell, a huge domain rushed toward the Marquis of Three Ean. Jian Wushuang also moved. In terms of speed, Jian Wushuang was also extremely fast, like a ghost. The Marquis of Three Ean's eyes were like lightning. He wanted to capture Jian Wushuang's figure, but suddenly, a slight sword hum sounded in the void around him, and the black magic sword with endless reincarnation power shot toward him again. Damn it! The Marquis of Three Ean did not dare to underestimate the power of the black magic sword, so he had to immediately block it. However, as soon as he blocked the black magic sword, Jian Wushuang's figure appeared beside him. Then, a series of strange sword techniques containing the majestic space-time rule attacked him. The reincarnation sword formation exerted the reincarnation rule to the extreme, while Jian Wushuang's sword technique exerted the space-time rule to the extreme. The two rules complemented each other. One used close combat, while the other formed a sword formation to attack continuously. It was a perfect combination. For a time, Jian Wushuang's battle strength had soared to the limit. Under such circumstances, the Marquis of Three Ean's advantage in speed and strength had been greatly limited. The blood-colored fog on his body surged, and he had also maximized his strength. However, even so, he could only fight with Jian Wushuang to a draw. As for the scene where he easily suppressed Jian Wushuang more than a year ago, it had never happened again. This kid, the last time I fought with him was just more than a year ago. At that time, I could easily suppress him. But now, when I fight with him head-on, I can't even gain the slightest advantage? Marquis of Three Ean was extremely shocked, but he was more unwilling. He wanted to find an opportunity to use his strongest skill. However, with the combination of Jian Wushuang's sword formation and swordsmanship, he could not find an opportunity to use his strongest skill. Indeed, he did not have the slightest advantage in the fight with Jian Wushuang. On both sides of the battlefield, the experts from both sides of the Pill Sun Sacred World and the Heavenly Void World were shocked to see the battlefield. Who is this person? How can he be on par with the Marquis of Three Ean? The Marquis of Three Ean has tried his best, but he still can't gain any advantage. This Sword 1 is so powerful. The Marquis of Three Ean has fought with this Sword 1 not long ago. Last time, he definitely suppressed Sword 1. But now it has only been a year. This Sword 1 hasn't made any breakthroughs. How can he improve so much? Many experts of the Heavenly Void World could not believe what they were seeing. The Marquis of Three Ean was a supreme existence in the Heavenly Void World, second only to the Heavenly Void Temple Master. They all knew how powerful the invincible Divine Master was, and Sword 1 was able to fight him to a draw. This was enough to show Sword 1's battle strength. As for the experts of the Pill Sun Sacred World, they were also shocked. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.